Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Holy Humanist. Thank you all for being here. Today, we have a very interesting and special guest with us. So, I basically held a Twitter space, and this lady, basically an American Pakistani lady, Nafarman, she joined the Twitter space and we had a really, really interesting discussion. And it's amazing how you can just connect with people because we've got to this point today that, we're going to hear her story and her journey and why she now considers herself an agnostic. So we're going to unpack that a little bit as well because she has made it clear that she is not an ex-Muslim or like does not want to say that she's an ex-Muslim. And we really have to look into the reasons behind that and how difficult it is for even questioning Muslims all the world. And yeah, so let me bring Nafarman on and then let's get the conversation going. But I did just want to say that one thing that stood out for me as well is name, because Nafarman actually means disobedient in Urdu. So when I was adding her to the space, I was thinking, is that like an English name? And I was like, Nafarman. And then I was like, it's Nafarman. But Nafarman, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you for having me, Noria.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for joining because I feel like this is going to be an extremely interesting discussion, and I'm really excited to kind of hear your journey and your thought process. Obviously, I got the overall snapshot on Twitter, but I just felt like it would be great for my YouTube audience to hear what you have to say and what you think and what you've experienced and the conclusions that you've currently come to. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think let's kind of get started. If you want to kind of just hit us off with, I guess, how it all started, your upbringing, your background, that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course. So I've was born and raised in the United States. I come from a Pakistani family, a pretty like moderate Sunni family. My family, immigrated to the United States like in the late 80s. So it was during Zia al-Haq's like administration. So like my parents and especially like my family, they weren't very religious as they are now. They do pray more often and everything. They're just very culturally um, like held on to a lot of misogynistic patriarchal beliefs. The typical like the woman does all the housework and everything and all that stuff. But like at the very beginning when I was raised, I remember like I didn't believe like I was Muslim because the first time I was even told I was Muslim when I went to Sunday school when I was like pretty young. So I had no idea what it meant. All I knew is that like there were certain rules that I had to abide by, that like I couldn't eat certain foods, and that this is haram. And whenever I asked like what does haram mean, people just tell me, well, it's just not allowed. I'm like, but why? And like no one could ever give me an answer of why. But I've always was like a skeptic, but just out of fear I never spoke out. I grew up in a lot of different environments that were filled with abuse, done by me from done to me and done to a lot of my cousins, a lot of the female members of my family. Just I grew up around like a lot of abusive men, and I had fear instilled inside of me that like you cannot question anybody, you could not talk back. So I had that fear going on throughout my whole life. So whenever I was told like you just can't do this because X, Y, and Z because you're Muslim, I was like, okay, I don't want to question anything. I don't want to piss anyone off, and I don't want to get in trouble. So that's why I never questioned it. Like I always had those questions, but I kept them inside of me. I never spoke to anyone about it because it was instilled in me a long time. It's just like this is who you are. You're supposed to pray to Allah and you're supposed to fear Him. And I think one of the things that I do want to talk about is I grew up in a very diverse area in the United States. It's very diverse. I didn't grow up around a lot of Muslims. There was a lot of Christians, a lot of Jewish people, just like a mixture of different people that I grew up around. So it was hard for me to accept that I was Muslim because I was like, why can't I just accept that I'm just a human being, just like everyone else? We're all different and everything. So when I went to Sunday school, like I remember like sitting there and like my teacher, she was telling me just like, like Allah has made everything. He has made the trees, he has made you, and he has made this building that we're inside. And in my head, I'm thinking like, someone probably planted that tree. Like someone probably made this building. And like, I'm pretty sure like there were other people that like took part into like making these certain things, but I never said anything because I was just so scared. I was just like, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna get in trouble. I'm not gonna bring my parents or like, any of my family members into this. I'm just gonna keep quiet. Um, I am very
Nafarman,
lucky
I'm
enough.
so sorry. I have to, but just real quick. That must have been so difficult, like always just internalizing these questions, never getting
Yeah.
answers and thinking so like differently to what you've been told. Like, how do you even live with that for so long, you know? It drive you crazy.
Yeah, and it did because I always told you have to like, internalize everything. Like, especially as a woman, how I was like raised. I mean, there's certain things I do want to get into in like the developing years of my life of some that happened to me. Um and it was just like fear and doubt was always installed in me. And just the overall feeling of just dealing with it. When you're a Pakistani woman, you have to deal with it. You have to have sabr. You have to deal with every single thing. Like, you know, seeing your elders like go through it, just like, well, we went through it, therefore you have to go through it. So you have to go through these pressures. And I didn't want to live that way. I knew since I was like when I was really young, just growing up in the household that I grew up in, I thought if this is what it means to be Muslim, if this is what it means to be Pakistani, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to accept this in my life. And I knew like later on, like I always had this fear and this pressure in my heart. Like, I know that I'm going to get disowned. I know I'm not going to be accepted by everyone, but I'm just going to do my best. I'm just going to do my best. And the other thing that like, kind of just made me like always be a skeptic Muslim and a questioning one is I grew up around a lot of Christians. I had like a lot of the people that I know that are the most kindest, most compassionate people are Christians. And I remember the first time I walked into one of their churches, it was like when I was around college, like when I was in college. Um, I always like whenever I talk to Christians too, or like a lot of my friends of what the Christianity is about, they always mentioned the word love. That there's like the love of Jesus, the love of God. And I'm not saying that like this religion is better than that religion. Like that's not my purpose at all to like debate which is better or if any are better. But that's something that I wish I saw as a Muslim. I wish that I could like grow up in an environment that told me that you are loved for the way that you exist. We love you just because you are here. But I never heard that word. Like I always waited to hear that word throughout my life in the mosque, by these imams who did these sermons. It was always fear. It was never love. It was always fear. You had to fear Allah. You had to, obey him. It was obedience and fear. And I just, it always scared me. It really, really scared me because I thought, you know what? I'm, I can either accept that I am not really Muslim or I don't even deserve to be Muslim. Um, and just accept that I could probably go to hell and just do my best and, live my life and just do my best by people. Um,
But
I
Nafarman, did
also,
you also like sorry, just a
uh-huh,
quick, did you also like for example when I saw like I didn't know the ins and outs of Christianity, I still don't, but like you said, people growing up in such an international school, I saw people that were
mhm,
Christian and this other faith called Druze, which is like a community in Lebanon, which is kind of a mishmash of Islam and Christianity, but their religion like and their whole mentality was so chill that I would always think to
mhm,
myself like, oh, why am I in this one, or what, like not in this one because I thought it was actually the truth and the right one, but I always thought like, why is this one so intense? And as you said, like you're driven by fear and you feel guilty every time you do something to you wrong. You feel guilty, like that does not leave you. So I would think to myself like, oh, their religion is actually so much more chill. Like why did I get this
yeah.
one in a weird way, right? Did you ever have that?
Yes. Yes, because I was told I was Muslim. I did not know like what it meant to be Muslim. What I do remember is like when I was really young, my daddy, like she told me the kalma. She's like, you have to say this every night. I was like, okay. And I did not understand what it meant. I did not like understand like what does that mean. I asked her for the translation. She's like, no. I cannot give you the translation. You have to just say it every single night because that's what you're supposed to do. And that is like the mindset that I was like, that was pushed inside of me. You don't question, you just do what you are told. And so, you know, living like that in the United States as a Pakistani Muslim, it's like your household is like Pakistan, but when you step outside, it's the United States. It's freedom of
Yeah.
thought. It's the freedom of speech. It's the freedom to express yourself. So I've always personally throughout my life have like literally lived in different layers of who I'm supposed to be. Because, you know, on one hand, I've been told this is who I'm supposed to be. On the other hand, like I've, you know, grew up in the US where, you know, you are free to express yourself, but I don't even know who I'm supposed to be because I'm told that this is who, you know, you're supposed to be a Muslim and this is how you're supposed to live your life. And yeah, it got like, I've always just been confused my whole life. There's always just, you know, the only way that I've ever survived it this long is living a double life because I really had no choice. There is also like during my developing years, um, I was, you know, I was taught the Quran when I was really young. I think around the time that I hit puberty, my parents told me just like you have to read the Quran, you have to learn how to read it, and I had to take classes. Um, I was never taught the translation. I wanted to read the English version. My parents said, you know, don't worry about the English version. You have to first read the Arabic version. But I had no idea what I was saying. I had no idea what I was reading. And then afterwards,
Did you
I
have
went
like a
to
Quran
a
teacher, or did you like were you reading it by yourself, or?
I had a Quran teacher. He was first it was a male, and this was before I had like you know hit puberty, but right when like I guess I was developing and becoming a woman, like outwardly, he stopped teaching me. He said like you know you're gonna go to this one lady that I know. I think like was a relative of his,
Mhm.
whose house I went to, which a lot of like my female cousins have been taught the Quran by her. And you know, she taught me how to do namaz, and she taught me you know, a lot of things, which caused a lot of like doubts inside of me because I read a lot of, I read like different books about like what it meant to be like a woman in Islam, and it was just really, just some of the things that she taught me, and versus what I read, it just seemed very misogynistic,
Oh
and
my
it
God,
like it was
I do
something.
not envy for that book. Wow, that's
Yes,
a
so
horrible
I
read.
I I like if I find that book, I think it's somewhere in my house. But I'll let you know the title of it. But when I first read it, I was just like, what? Like, I don't understand. And like when I was like in her classes, she told me like when she taught me how to do the namaz, she's like, you have to pray 5 times a day. She's like, there's no if, ands, or buts about it. She told me she's like, if you miss one prayer, if you miss one single prayer, you it's like you're setting Allah on fire, and you know you're making him
What?
angry, you're making him sad, and like I didn't want to do that, but like when we don't have time. And that was the other thing too, like I always just had like I like the way that I thought about like this religion, it was just through a very logical way. I was like, but why do we have to do this? Why 5 times a day? Why not just once? You know, like why is that these certain times? Like why do we have to do this 3 times and this like you know 2 times, or you know yada yada yada. And I just never understood, but people never told me why. It was never beyond like,
I am
just
getting
beyond.
sick and tired for you of nobody giving you an answer.
Yes, and it's just because anytime that like, I would question anything, just like, no, you just have to be Allah, or like if no one knew anything, it's just like only Allah knows. I'm just like, okay, but like I want to know more. But no one ever told me more. Now, I just want to mention the book that about like, being a woman in Islam, that book that I read around that time when I was like around in middle school, it was just mainly like what I got from it is like, if you're a Muslim woman, you have to cover up, you have to be modest, and you will be rewarded in Jannat, in paradise. And in paradise, it's going to be wonderful and beautiful. And I'm like, okay, but like, does it go anything beyond that? Does it mention anything about me trying to be a good person? Because that's what I cared about. Like, that's what
Nice.
I only cared about. It's like, does God care about me being a good person, having compassion for other people? And I never got that from anywhere in the way I was taught as a Muslim. I mean, of course, nowadays, like, what I hear from a lot of the Islamic apologists is like, I've heard people say like, oh, being Muslim is about what is inside of your heart. It's about peace and it's about compassion. And I'm like, I don't think that's maybe what you want it to be, but that's not what it really is. And
Yes.
I really wish it was like that. Like, I really wish um it was like that, but I've always just walked through my life as a Muslim woman, kind of in a way like trying to defend, like not defend Islam necessarily, but like Muslims, because I always just try to tell people, it's always just how you interpret things, or how you what it means to you, because it can mean something different to anyone. But
Mhm.
I think it wasn't until like this year that I came to the conclusion, maybe I'm not as Muslim as I thought I was, or I ever thought I was. Because I remember there was like a point after I took those classes with that the lady who taught me namaz and everything. I like really came to a point in my life when I tried to pray 5 times a day, and I couldn't. And I thought, I can accept that I may go to hell, and that, like, I may not, like, that I'm gonna piss off God, but I'm gonna do the best I can to be a good human being. And when Judgment Day comes, I can answer for everything I did. And hopefully that works. Hopefully
And
that works.
Nafarman, what was the reason, sorry, that you couldn't like do the 5 prayers? Was it just that you couldn't bring yourself to do it? It was just too much? Or like you just yeah, what was
It was mainly out of laziness. It was
okay.
just mainly out of laziness, and also I never knew, like, why is it 5 times a day? And, like, the whole wudu system too,
Yeah.
before then, and then, like, it was just such an inconvenience to me. I didn't wanna, like, get up this early in the morning to do this. I tried to do it, like, every Ramadan, like, just out of respect, but
Yeah.
honestly, like, even when I prayed, like, I've like, I experienced a lot of things in my life when I tried to like pray so hard to like, Allah to like give me some kind of healing, but I never got any healing from when I prayed. I didn't feel anything. And I think that itself was like so discouraging to me and made me feel horrible because I'm like, am I like am I a very like terrible Muslim that I can't even feel nothing, during these sermons, during these prayers, during like, the I think what is it called? The Night of Power, Layla
Yeah.
al-Qadr.
Yeah.
I didn't feel anything. I would try to feel something, but it was mainly out of like my own humanity and compassion in a way. And I want to go into that saying that like when I used to hear sermons from, whether it's scholars or imams or just from other Muslims, when we talk about, having compassion and humanity, it's like in the spite of rather than like doing it just because you're a good person. And I want to explain that further because I think I mentioned in the spaces about the whole doing everything for a reward system.
Yeah.
Whenever I heard people talk about like, treating other non-Muslims with kindness, it's like, well, look at us, just, being good people, we're treating them with kindness despite the fact that they're golfers. And I never got with that. No matter what, I never understood that because I'm like, why is it so important for you to like, have these points or like, just try to be a good human being for the sake of religion, than just try to be a good human being for, the sake of humanity. I know it
Yeah.
sounds cheesy, but like, why not just
No.
try to be a good person? Why does it matter if that person is a quote unquote a golfer? And the fact that you refer to people, especially in the United States, as that is horrible. Because I don't view like my friends and the people that I am around like that, and I would never view them like that. And yeah, I think that's just like I've always never. That's why I never felt connected to the community, and I never felt connected to the book, and I never really felt overall connected to the religion. And I think just I went through a lot in my life with the way a lot of the Muslim men in my family treated me. And I do want to mention, um, and I'm going to put a trigger warning for anyone who doesn't want to hear anything about child sexual abuse. or molestation, just for your stream, that like I am gonna be mentioning it in this part.
Thank you for the
Noria.
disclaimer,
Yeah,
Nafarman.
yeah. So just for anyone to let you know, if you need to step out, I'm gonna be talking about this starting now. So when I was young, I had an uncle who he sexually abused me, and he molested me and groomed me for a few years. And he tried to do it up until like after I was finished with high school, going into college. And he was Muslim. And I felt, I felt horrible about it. And actually, help whenever I think about that, it makes me sick. But I'm at a point in my life where I've processed it fully through therapy, through telling, some of the close people in my life, and finally telling some of my family members. But I remember telling, a family member of mine at the time, and they didn't do anything. It was just kind of like a hush hush topic, as it is with a lot of Pakistani families who do have certain incidents like this happening to, children in their family, which is very, very common. So I like, when that happened to me, I thought, I definitely don't want to be around Muslim people, or like just be a Muslim if this is what it means. If this is what you're gonna do, and this is how you see women, and this is how you see children and little girls, I don't want to deal with it. And I've had incidents of, a lot of, women in my life who've been married as a child, have been gone through molestation and, child abuse in their lives, and they're all Muslim, and and those things have been done by Muslim men. And I'm not trying to like, I'm trying to, my intention is not to generalize every single Muslim out there, but just to highlight the fact that these issues exist, and they deserve our time. They deserve um, the energy to be talked about. They deserve compassion and humanity to be talked about. And that is something that I've always tried to lead with in my life. Um, but yeah, I know that was like a lot, but yeah.
No, not from on. I just, I think you're so brave for even saying it. I hope that at some level, as you said, you've already worked through it all, but I hope at some level, even this for you is cathartic. And like you said, I think it's so important that these things are talked about and discussed because, at, like in our culture, exactly like you said, even when this is happening within the family, your own family members tell you to just be quiet because there's so much tied to the concept of honor and like keeping it in the family. And in Pakistan, most of the rapes and sexual abuse that occurs is from like the immediate relatives, whether it's like uncles on the maternal or paternal side or whatever, but
Hmm.
even the fathers at some point. So it's not, Pakistani women, Muslim women are not even safe in their own houses. The one place you expect to be safe around your immediate family, you are at risk there. If you can't be safe as a
Hmm.
woman in your own house, like, then, what chance do you have? But I'm extremely sorry for what you went through. And I'm so glad that you got your power back. I really, really am.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And I think speaking about it gives us a lot of power, but I can understand why people don't want to come forward with it. And I don't necessarily blame the adults who didn't report it because they are a mandatory reporter. I don't blame them because they are also under that power of silence too, because they grew up around it. And even now, like when I think of like, the women who are very internally misogynistic in our communities, who are the aunties and stuff, I like can't help but feel sorry for them instead of trying to be so mad at them, because that is how they were ingrained. This is how they were raised, to be um, and to think this is how they've been conditioned and socialized. And I just really hope that like if there's any woman out there who has gone through something that I've gone through, I hope that they have the safe space to speak about it and get the help that they need. And the other thing that I want to pivot to is seeking mental help and finding the power in that, as growing up as a Muslim. Because if anything that has saved my life and saved, me mentally, growing up with depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation, which has all been linked to being a Muslim, the thing that really saved me was therapy. was being able to talk to someone about it, someone who wasn't Muslim, and being able to like get the mental help that I needed, and the support that I needed. And it's people, honestly, it's people that like really helped me who weren't a Muslim. Um, which also, like, in a way, kind of added more to like my skepticism that, like, no, it's okay if I'm not the best Muslim out there. It's okay if I'm a terrible Muslim as long as I'm a good human being. And at the end of the day, till the day I die, I want to always be on the side of humanity and compassion.
But Nafarman, that is so deep what you just said, because like if you think about that for a second, what you were saying is that like it doesn't matter if I was a bad Muslim, at least I'd be a good person. So what is effectively being said is that technically you cannot be the morally righteous person that you want to be in the folds of Islam. Like Islam tells you to be a worse person than your inner moral compass and compassion. That's
Hmm.
wild, right? That I mean,
Yeah.
for a religion of peace, for something that's meant to be a spiritual way of life or whatever, for something that claims to have all the answers about everything and it guides every waking moment of your life, which foot you step in for the bathroom first or whatever. And you'd think
Hmm.
that you would find some comfort and peace, but you're constantly there battling with these ideas that I love these people that Islam tells me to hate, and I see
Yeah.
goodness in these people more than I see in my own people.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very hard to like come to terms with. I'll be honest with you, and that's why I can't fully call myself an ex. To even say it out loud just makes me feel blasphemous because of like how I was raised. Um, and I think, like, for anyone out there who is doubting, I say to never stop questioning. You know, no matter how religious you are, to never stop questioning, and also to do more research into your roots, where you come from, where your ancestors come from. Because from like where my family comes from Pakistan, like we were all once, non-Muslim. Um, so I
Yeah,
think like, when it comes to like religion and everything, I I don't I don't want to force anyone to do something that they don't want to do. And I'm very respected. And I love Muslims. I love atheists. I love everyone. I want to, at the end of the day, I always want to choose humanity and compassion. I just want, at least the Muslim community to realize that there are a lot of issues in your community, and there's a lot of, very dangerous ideas within your religion that affect a lot of people today. Even if it's not done in your household by the men in your life, does not change that it's being done anywhere else in somebody else's household. Even if you're not living in Pakistan or Iran, those seeds exist in other people's households, and they grow and they grow. And I
yeah.
think sometimes you have to cut the root. You have to chop off the whole plant or throw the seeds away or eat them because I'm trying to eat mine. I'm trying to eat all those seeds. And I'm doing the best I can, but it's very, very hard. Yeah.
No, and I mean it's completely understandable because I can see it. I know like everything that you've obviously thought about and the day-to-day life lived experience that you have. But like when you talk about the fact that you can't like actually make that leap in that word, and it seems so blasphemous. I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation because this is kind of like the level of fear, as you said, that they have implanted and ingrained in you. And by not providing answers as a young questioning child, when you're being curious, you're asking normal things like why, what any
Hmm.
child should be allowed to ask and be given somewhat of a reasonable answer to. Islam works with, as you said earlier, fear and doubt, and I'd like one more as well, guilt. These three
Hmm.
things, like they are what keeps somebody's mind so entrapped in that kind of indoctrinated state, which is why I'm so glad that like you've like said, screw it, I'm going to put humanity before anything, regardless of what that makes me look like in Allah's eyes. But
Hmm.
the fact that like this just goes to show whoever's listening and however many of you are listening that the level to which they indoctrinate you and instill fear in you as a child, that like even something it's not even benign. These two words, ex-Muslim, it's a huge deal. I mean, the second you say that, you've taken on pretty much, like everyone from ISIS to, your Muslim next door. So I completely understand that you're not willing to do that, but I think that's a classic example of Islam doing Islam, right? And Muslims
Hmm.
being
Yes.
Muslims.
Yes, I mean, the closest thing I can call myself religious wise, I'm an agnostic Muslim. And what I mean, if something like that exists, what I'm really trying to say is that I don't really believe in these little rules here and there that, you're not going to go to heaven because, you show two strands of hair because you didn't marry a Muslim, person, or you like drink and yada yada. I don't care about these little teeny tiny rules in the existence of the whole universe. I just hope that maybe it's very naive for me to say this, but like I hope that the creator, whoever he is, whether it's Allah, whether it is God, or whether it is the Judaism God, I hope that whoever it is, in a metaphorical way, he is bigger than all of this. I hope that, like, when I do leave this world, whatever I do see on the other side, I hope that whoever it is on the other side just really counted my character and my actions above everything else, if anything. And that they are bigger than this, like bigger than everything. Because if you really do call yourself, a God who created the world, why do you care whether I cover my hair? Why do you care what I do behind doors, what anyone does behind doors, or whether someone doesn't like know the prophet? Because I did not know about the apostasy law at all. I think it was until that I learned about the ex-Muslims, that label and the organizations that I learned about it. I had no idea because I've always been told that you cannot question God. You cannot say anything because it's close to blasphemous. You cannot say anything about the prophet. And I internalized that because I didn't even know who that man is. But we've been told to love him and everything. And it's just really interesting how we're told to love him, but not to love God.
Yeah.
To love him more than anything, but I don't even know who that man is. Sometimes, like, in a crazy, like, this is a crazy thought that I have sometimes. I'm like, what if I could just have a time machine and go back into that world and be like, let me talk to you for a second. Let me just talk to you for a second. Like, who are you? And what makes you think that, like, you are so sure about everything? Um, yeah, I always had doubts about him, but I I never dared question him. I never ever dared question him because we know, like, as a Pakistani, how people feel so strongly about him, but we've never met the man. We
Yeah.
don't know who he is. So, like, why are you, like, literally killing people in the name, in his name? Why? Like, why is that something that even has to occur to you? Why is that something that you would even accept or even think about?
Yeah, and why is that ingrained in your sources? Like, what the hell? Why is
Yes.
it there forever? It's like
Yes.
that's wild. But no, Nafarman, this is so interesting because I guess like you talking right now and kind of where your head's at reminds me of kind of how I was for a lot of my years as a teenager growing like being a Muslim, growing up in the
Mhm.
Middle East, going to such an international school. You have friends from everywhere, and you can't keep saying to yourself, I'm not going to be friends with the kuffar or an infidel because my God tells me to. And for me, it was even weirder because I was in Saudi Arabia, so I'm like in the land of Allah anyway. So already,
Mhm.
like, it should be fine. But I used to think the exact same way, like as you grow up as a teenager, you will go, you will start going clubbing and you will kind of have your first drink or cigarette or whatever. And I'd always think that, like, even as a Muslim, I would justify it and say, Allah really has to have bigger fish to fry than worry about what I did on Friday night, kind of thing. And I was like, and
Mhm.
even if I do go up and meet him there, he'll understand. Like, I was a young woman. This is what we do. This is what, like, I never understood the petty rules thing. I guess I'm just not a sucker for rules anyway. And I thought Islam was always like way too totalitarian. Like, surely there's people. I was like, there's people dying in the world. There's kids dying of cancer. Really, God, I know He's all seeing and all knowing, but He's really not zooming in scope to like see what Noria is up to right now. And I know the angels are making a note of it, but I don't know. I had the same kind of thing. I didn't. Maybe it was so intense that I didn't take it seriously. at some points because I
Hmm.
kept veering towards like what I thought was Sufism, and I think kind of how you felt when you were surrounded by Christians and stuff. I wanted that, as I was saying. So whenever I'd pick up a Rumi book or he would say something about God is love and love is God, I was like, yes, this was my guy. This is my sect of Islam. Like I'm
Yep.
Sufi. I'm Sufi now. Um, but yeah, it was all in and like in kind of trying to get to exactly what you're saying, being like humanity is more important, compassion is more important. These friends, I love these people. They're not Muslim, but they're better than some of the Muslims I know. So why would Allah not make want me to like them? You know, it made no sense.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think I want to mention something too. When we think about like when a lot of Muslims or Muslim apologists, when they like talk about women's rights, especially in the West versus like what however it exists everywhere, I think the thing that I really wish would be ingrained into a lot of people's heads that if we are really God's creation, if women are really God's creation, and if you think that them being killed is like so horrific that doesn't make someone a Muslim, why aren't you? And I think I mentioned this in spaces too. I'm like, why aren't you fighting for their lives? What are you doing as a community to protect these people? What are you doing as a community to protect your women? Because all the I think a lot of discourse is surrounded by like, you have to follow the sunnah, you have to follow the hadith, you have to follow all these rules to protect yourself as a woman. But I'm like, but why is it that we need protection so much, and from whom? Find a common denominator. From whom do you need protection from so much? Because if women can be assaulted and raped in the Kaaba, which is the most holiest places, as you say, in the world, I mean, what is not clicking with you? Like what is not clicking?
Yeah.
So
You know, they've had to have like I saw a video circulating. There's like a mosque where they've had to actually put padlocks on the shoes outside because they can't even trust people to go into the mosque and pray and come out take their own shoes. Like this is the
yeah,
level of happening.
I know, and it's pretty ridiculous. But yeah, like I have a lot of thoughts. I actually like wrote down a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about. Like kind of just Pakistani culture and what it really means to be Pakistani too, because like as you've seen, like you cannot. It's sometimes hard for you to call yourself Pakistani without also calling yourself Muslim, or like those two things cannot like, or like entertain. They're not interchangeable. Like they cannot exist
Mm.
without the other. And like the whole like a lot of discussion what it means to have like the culture of it versus the religion of it, and just things about what is like a lot of issues surrounding what it means to also be a woman coming from that environment.
Okay, that would be fantastic. Let's do this. Also,
Yeah.
Nafarman, just before we do get into that, I will try and highlight there was somebody in the comments. Hold on. It's just because, yeah, Fico, I think, sorry if I'm not saying that name correctly, but also it was relating to you quite a lot of the things that you said. So I just wanted to highlight Fico saying, my
Hmm.
parents beat the crap out of me for questioning. Haha, didn't work. And Fico, I'm so sorry. Like, honestly, this is why conversations like this are so important. This is what's happening behind closed doors in certain families. Like, you're getting the living daylights beaten out of you for asking a normal question. Like Nafarman as well. I mean, she said it just off air, and I hope you don't mind me saying it live, Nafarman, that she said if I start whispering, it's because I'm still in the house with my family. So that I have to be careful to with the the volume of my voice and what I'm saying. But this is why like people are questioning, asking normal things, asking for genuine answers, and this is the pushback that Islam gives you. So yeah, Fico, I am really sorry for what you went through as well, and I'm glad that it didn't stop you from questioning because you're here today and you're part of this discussion. But yeah, just
Yeah.
on that. But go ahead,
Yeah,
Afra.
no. Yeah, I mean, I there's just so many things that like I wanted to like talk about, especially with you, Nuria, coming from like a Pakistani background. But I know your background is a little bit different than mine. But like my whole life I've been in the West. So that's the only thing I know of. And I know I come with a lot of privilege too. I have had access to resources and just lived a different life versus than what a lot of women in Pakistan have experienced. And I do, feel for them, and I really wish that I could I think like what I'm trying to say, like talk, like, kind of just support them more. But I've been like, trying to pay more attention to what is going on, especially in the last few years. But the reason why I think like me even just coming on and just having trying to find you or just trying to find people to relate to, I was always scared to do that because being Muslim is just I've always had so many things just triggering for me that I never wanted to like, look into. I never wanted to research anything because I was indoctrinated to not do any research. That I thought like, if I found an organization like this, or if I found people that have went through the same doubts as I did, um, I I just thought like it'd be close to being feeling as blasphemous about it because of how I've been indoctrinated to believe about, having doubts and questions. But I'm glad that I found, you, and I'm glad to find, ex-Muslims, and people such as you, and many like-minded people as you, who've had these experiences, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, exactly. And as you were like, we can relate to so much because like we usually grow up in families where you have like I try and tell other people like you have no idea, especially for me, I was like the eldest daughter as well. I was like, you have no idea like just the daily tiny battles that you have to fight in
Hmm.
a Pakistani household, A, just being a woman,
Hmm.
but B, like dealing with the natural like inbuilt patriarchy and misogyny that comes with Pakistani culture, and then the Islamicness ingrained on top of that. So we're talking
Yeah.
everything from like modesty culture to from the day you're born to say, you're only in this house temporarily, you're going to get married and go off to somebody else's
Hmm.
house. It's actually a saying, like they say,
Yeah.
"Ab barai ho jayenge," like you're not part of us
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
So you are taught like that, your whole like life is leading up to one big day, your wedding day. After that it's all about why haven't you knocked out a child or two. Then it's why can't that child walk. But everything is policed, how much weight you've lost or how skinny or how fat you are, and
Yep.
everyone is policing one another. And there's just so many daily things, like you can't express yourself, you can't go out and get a piercing or a tattoo or whatever off your own volition. I mean, you've got to be so domesticated and good at making the perfect round roti. It's just the
Yep.
priorities are so skewed. You're not encouraged to go and do whatever it is that takes, fancies your like whatever calling you have for school or whatever. It's even that it's so limited. They try and
Hmm.
like narrow put you into a box as a woman, put you into a box as a man. And the daily hypocrisy is like, I've got a brother. Thankfully, my parents were a little bit more progressive, but I mean, even down or seeing my cousins, the guy would be able to do whatever the hell he wanted, and those
Yep.
same privileges were not extended to the sister. He could literally go out, come back, and say, "Yeah, I was out all night, went clubbing, blah blah blah," talk about it. The girl is not even allowed out of the house after 6 p.m. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. And that is something that I personally had to fight for because I realized that like no matter how much guilt is installed in us, because I think like just speaking as someone who grew up in that environment, shame is installed in you from the day that you were born. Like you have no choice but to have shame because they will literally push it inside of you. You have like I think shame is ingrained in everything we do and what we wear, how we walk, who we talk to, and it just installed with a lot of fear around you too that I literally had tried to fight for. I mean, I thankfully have had a lot of like I guess quote unquote haram experiences, a whole lot of them. But I'm proud of it. Like I'm proud of all of it. And I've really let go a lot of the misogyny that I internalized in my life revolving a lot of women who I felt like, I didn't think I felt like maybe they should be ashamed of like how they dress or like the sexual history that they have. I mean, I think like everything evolving around sex, like I had so much shame about it, that I wasn't willing to accept that, like, I also too should be able to freely express myself. Um, and yeah, like I've really had to fight to like kind of fight against like the curb to have that freedom and have that level of freedom. But there's one thing I do want to mention. I think like when it comes to misogyny and when it comes to being a woman of color, but from this background, it's like we are fighting different layers of misogyny. Like when you're
Yes.
living in the West, there's the overall like layer of misogyny where there's unequal pay and like reproductive rights, like just those are just like just a couple of things I'm mentioning. And then if you're Pakistani, well, there's like another layer of like misogyny that you have to face, so that's number two. And then if you're Muslim, then there's a whole nother level of misogyny that you face, and you're literally at battle with three different sides consistently your whole life. And if you're lucky enough, keyword lucky enough, you are maybe like raised by people um that do allow you to express who you are and do what you want. But that only depends on how lucky you are, and no one gets to choose that. Um and I think like that's what I wish a lot of Muslim women, especially a lot of hijabis, would have more compassion towards women who don't want to wear the hijab or are against, wearing the hijab in their lives, because even though they may have like, different experiences, I think they should also realize that, your environment and the people around you allowed you to have those experiences, believe it or not. Like you living in the West has allowed you to feel free to, be able to be who you are and wear what you want. Whereas like if you were to live in Iran or like a lot of theocratic Islamic countries, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. And not everyone gets to choose that, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. And not, thank you so much, Nafarman, for saying this, because I feel like I try and shout this from the rooftops, and people don't really always understand the struggle. Like when you said, like I always say this as well, like the feminism that we're fighting for, or the women empowerment that we're fighting for, is so different in the West. As you said, it's, like we're getting so much better here. We're getting things like paternity leave. I'd even consider that a win for
Hmm.
feminism. But yeah, it's more about shattering the glass ceilings and having more women as board members and in C positions of companies. It's kind of like that. But in when coming from the background that we come from, we are fighting for women empowerment on a basic day. I should not be expected to serve my husband all the time
Hmm.
and cook and clean, or have children that I don't want to have, or give up my job right now, or whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, like you described those layers perfectly, like what we are trying. I mean, look at what's happening with the sorry, it's called the Women's March in Pakistan. But the Orange
Yeah.
March, like the slogans that they hold, the pickets that they hold are so basic, like warm up your own food, or like I'm not your slave. Like, this is the
Yeah.
kind of battles that we're coming from. And even in the West, even if we live here, I mean, I work in domestic violence in the UK, and I can see that in South Asian homes behind closed doors, it is playing out exactly the way it would play out back home.
Yeah.
It's just because we have the legal safeguards in place that repercussions for it. But those people, it doesn't matter if you live in the West or not, these ingrained things are always there. So thank you so much for highlighting the fact that we, just as a woman, you and I, for wanting to exist, for wanting to wear what we want, for wanting to talk to who we want to, for wanting to take control of our lives, so get married, not get married, travel the world, whatever, date, we are expected now from on, right? We're like we're a young child, then we're hyperly sexualized. You're meant to wear the hijab, you're meant to wear modest clothes, but you're not taught a single word about sex or healthy relationships. Then you get married,
Yeah.
boom, at the ripe age of 18, if you're good enough to do that,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
you're expected to know everything about a relationship and bear children and have this happy family that's added to the whole family.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
wild.
It's exhausting. It is
Yeah,
so exhausting, and that's just the one word I can describe it. It is so exhausting to just exist. That like whenever it's just so sad to hear about like a lot of women that we will never meet, we'll never see, who just die living that kind of life. And it's just so, so sad. Because we can't save everyone. Like, you and I and anyone who is watching, we can't save every single person. But I hope that, like, speaking out with like my experience, hopefully it helps somebody else to feel okay with who they are, where they are right now, having doubts or just not feeling that they're good enough, and fighting their faith. Because I've had to fight my faith, experiences with my gender, experiences with, my life's trauma. on a daily basis, and it is tough. It makes me stronger, but like I wish I didn't have to be so strong all the time. Um, but it's something about Pakistani women that like I really want to highlight too for anyone who is listening. There's no one else like us in this world because we are resilient. Like South Asian women in general, we are so strong, resilient that like whenever to me, like I know this is just a side note, but whenever I see like a beautiful woman being married who has all these credentials or education, who's very strong and like very outspoken, just being married off to a very like misogynistic man, it really like hurts my heart because I don't think any like our men even deserve us, to
No,
honestly speaking. They don't deserve us. Like
you're right.
I mean, like, I think honestly, when it comes to like, turning human rights into a different direction, or like, just turning the wave, we are at that wave. We are the ones who are turning the wave in the country. Even though I'm not there, but like we're the ones who are turning the wave. We're the ones that are like, turning the curve on like what it means to be a woman, how to exist. And I've been raised by so many strong women in my life who are Pakistani that like when I hear any kind of misogynistic comment or like video or sermon from an imam, like it gives me such a visceral reaction because you are literally insulting anyone that I know. And I know that like Pakistani women especially are very strong, beautiful, and resilient. And I just want everything for all of you guys. I really want everything for you.
So freaking inspiring because you're so, oh my god, you literally like you are speaking my heart right now. Like I agree. I really like I look at some of our women and I look at the things that we've had to over generations put up with. Like
Yeah,
as you said, Nafarman, we are like we're on the pinnacle of that change. We're at the like that wave. Like we are riding that wave right now. But just 2 generations ago, like the things that I was actually, you touched on it earlier as well, and I'm really glad you said that because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and coming from where I am now and the way I think, I find myself when I sit with my family and stuff, I have very little in common in terms of like the way we think now. And I was
yeah,
just thinking about it and I was like, do you know what? Like some of these things that they say are so internally misogynistic. But then I was like, my own grandmother, she was born a year before partition and she was married off at what she was engaged at 13, married at 16 and had her first child at 17. And I just like looked and I was like, do you know what that would be called nowadays? That would not be allowed here. But of course, this woman is going to just think that all she wants for me is to get married and have babies and, have a good family because that is her love. That is what she
yeah,
thinks is that's all she knows. Like sitting on your father-in-law's lap at the age of 13 to like seal the deal of your wedding. This is warped. This is a real lived
yeah,
experience of this lady. Like she doesn't know any better. But yeah, this generational kind of thing that us putting our foot down, us saying no, us saying things that you do at home are basic life skills.
yeah.
We have the right to not get married. We have the right to remarry. We have the right to not think divorce is a taboo. We have the right to get mental health help. We have the right to
Mhm.
use like basic things.
Yep,
Um,
it does. And that's why I'm always like, I'm, I just like, I want so much for all of you guys. Like, I want so much success. And, just I hope that, like, if it's not possible in this generation, that a lot of the women are able to rebel in their families and live their lives, even if it is, even if it comes with so much guilt and shame, because that's the hardest part for me personally is overcoming that guilt and shame because it's instilled in you. And I hope that like a lot of women are able to overcome that and live their lives because these this generation, this older generation who is still alive, one day they won't be here and we're going to be stuck with their like belief system and their structure that they were born with, and we don't have to carry it. It is okay for us to smash that. It's okay for you to walk away and you won't be like it won't be like the end of the world. Because I think like a lot, especially the household I grew up in, is like if you went even just a little bit against your family or did something even just kind of out of defense, from like from what they believed was right. It's like it was like an offense to God. It was like the worst thing that you could do. It would be like the end of the world if you don't get married to this one person. It's the end of the world, if you wore this one thing to this one function. And it's just like little things, like these little like pockets of things that really, in hindsight, does not matter. And I see that in a lot of like, how like I guess in the way like Pakistan as a country, as a society, how it views women, you have like this whole social commentary of like this one video of this woman dancing, but then you also have a bunch of homes that have been destructed by floods, that need recovery, that need that a lot of people that do need money to and help for their homes. There are like people that are dying everywhere, but we need to focus on this like one little like things, like these little pockets of like irrelevant stuff. And
Stupid
it's
stuff like
just,
Nafarman. Stupid stuff like,
yes,
oh, like in the dramas they actually show that like the daughter-in-law of the house burnt the lentils, the dal, and she got kicked out of the
yeah,
house. And it's like, this is what you
yeah,
concern yourselves with. It,
yes, yes.
because
Oh
that's
my
so
gosh. And it's
cultural,
just,
right? Like that's what they put into our psyche. Like even as I just see Pakistani dramas on in the background, it's just the most horrible concepts. If the girl's not getting beaten or abused in her marriage, she's being
yeah,
treated like a domestic slave at home, or she's just
yes.
being put into a forced marriage situation. Like it's never a good time for a woman.
Never. And I also want like, a lot of the Pakistan community to also come in terms of what it means to also have a relationship. What does a rishta even mean? What does love even mean in the context of it? Because the way that I grew up, love did not exist. We did not marry for love. Like, it does not exist at all. So I really wish that like that could be more normalized, but also like as a community, come in terms with like what does that mean for your children, for this generation of getting into a relationship and getting married. What does that even mean? Because a lot of the stuff that I hear from a lot of people is just like, I need to get married because my parents say so. But I'm like, okay, if they weren't here, what would you do? Who would you be? What
Yeah.
would you do? Like, who would you be? Because that's something that I like thought of when I was like young, when I was like in that house, watching a lot of my uncles abuse their wives and their children. I thought, if this is what it means to get married, I don't want to get married. All I know is I'm never gonna settle. I'm gonna find the love of my life and go after that. But it will never be this at all. Like I don't care if I am the most shameless, like Dundee on the planet. I don't care. I'm gonna find the love of my life and go after that. And I really wish that like people would choose that. But I can understand like why a lot of people kind of fall into like these traps and that thinking, because it's a lot of pressure. And when you do live in an environment where you cannot escape that pressure financially or physically or emotionally, I don't blame anyone for like giving into it, but it is so sad. And I really wish that like arranged marriages and cousin marriages get banned. Con-
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I think it's yeah. No, but like especially cousin marriages, because I mean it is causing havoc, and especially in terms of like the medical ramifications
Yeah.
that we're facing in the UK. It's terrible, and it's like it's so obvious if you look at the stats that this issue is very much pertinent to one community, and it's the Pakistani Muslim community. So like
Yep.
tackle the problem head on. But just what you said earlier as well, that like I think, and again, hashtag not all, but I think as you said, like Pakistani men need to really kind of like prove that um, they deserve us, because Pakistani women have so much to offer, but most of the men, even up to our generation, are still brought up with this kind of really heavily misogynistic like home life, even if they don't know it.
Hmm.
Like certain practices
Yep.
are ingrained. And as you said, like, well, just talking about like the soft culture in Pakistan and everything that's geared towards it, for a woman, like you're not encouraged, you're not set up to be financially empowered. Even here working in domestic violence, when I look at a really young Pakistani woman and she's got like 5 kids and she's
Hmm.
younger than me, and I'm like, wow, like was this a marriage of your choice? Like did you want to get married? And a lot of the time the answers they give are exactly just said, well, I was getting to that age, so my parents forced me. Like, what could I do? My age
Yep.
was coming, so you just said yes. And I was like, what do you mean your age was coming? Like, what age? Like, where's the cutoff?
Yeah.
And they're just so resigned to that fact that, like, no, I was getting, I was turning like 18, 19. So, and they say in Urdu, like, they would say, like, my time was about to pass. And it's just,
Uh-huh.
why do we have this? I've been told myself that, like, after 30, you're like an expired milk carton. Like, your
Yep.
time is done. Like, you're off the shelf, or you kind of are only going to get leftovers now, like maybe divorced men or men with children or whatever.
Yeah.
But that thinking only exists in our kind of like South Asian culture or whatever, because you could go to the rest of the world and get married and fall in love with whoever at whatever age.
Yes. Yes. And I am someone in my 30s too. And I'm like, at this point, am I allowed to cuss on your live streams? Is that okay?
Go for it, Nafarman.
I mean,
It'd be my honor.
honestly, fuck all of that shit. Fuck all of that. Like, fuck that family,
Yeah.
fuck this family, whoever says anything, like, fuck all these aunties. I literally have made my mission, like, any kind of like dawah that I go to, that I'm gonna be your worst nightmare. Like, don't question nothing. That is none of your business. Cause there is like, a, so like, I've grown up in a very like, diverse environment and everything. And there is something that like, a lot of my friends say is like, pay the business that minds you. Mind your business and, keep it moving. And I really wish that kind of mindset was installed in, our community, to mind your business. Because how much time would we save? How much time would we save if y'all just like, lived your life,
You
don't
could
worry about
probably get to
nothing
the
that
moon,
anybody else is saying. Yeah.
could probably get to the moon if we just stop this nonsense for a week.
Yes, and I think like when I was watching one of your live streams with Diha Talks and Usman, that like, anytime there's like a problem with like a girl or a boy, it's like shadi is always like marriage is always the solution. But I mean, it's just such a waste of time, because why it it doesn't make any sense to me. Like I remember like I was like internally screaming when I was hearing it. I was just like, that is so is right. Like, the way they talk about it, but it's just insane that that is the only solution that we can come up with. Which I think like also we need to put more emphasis on mental health and like getting those resources out. But I also want to see like more studies done on women, Pakistani women or South Asian women, with a lot of the health issues that we have, because there's a rise of diabetes. There's PCOS is very common in our communities, and I want to know why. Like, why is it there not more studies being done? And it's really sad that like we those things are not even like at the forefront of a lot of topics that as a society like we talk about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like PCOS is so prevalent amongst South Asians in particular. I think it's like what, 1 in 3.
Hmm.
But yeah, again, just the insane lack of resources in Pakistan. Like even in terms of things like refuges for women, safe houses, domestic violence organizations, agencies, helpline numbers. There's so few and far between. So, again, when you're not giving
Hmm.
the women anything to work with, you're putting them into these potentially abusive, toxic households. You're telling them, as Nafarman said, that the solution for anything going wrong in your life is A, to get married, and B, if your marriage is on the rocks, the solution is to have a child. If it's still on the rocks, the solution is to have another child,
Yeah.
because magically that will just fix it. So what you're
Hmm.
left with is just a whole host of problems. And then again, because the country is on keeping itself and calling itself the Islamic Republic, you've got all of these issues where legally you can't even pass certain would protect domestic abuse bill because it directly contradicts Quran 434. Like this is a
Exactly.
real phenomenon.
Exactly. And I think like it's whenever I hear certain things like that or read certain things like that, then I just, I don't want to hear about peace. I don't want to hear about the fact that like, this religion is compassionate and peaceful. Because when you do go against something like that, then what are you really saying? What are you really telling the public too? And I think like when it comes to like, the politics of that country and like the reputation of like, the whole country itself, is that these individuals like these people that with that mindset, it is really you guys that are pulling down that country. And this is coming from someone that's completely on the outside. But if you want to kind of, I guess, like, better the reputation of your country and stuff, you have to let go of these ideas. That's the only way you move forward, or nothing else changes. Because from what I've seen, there's been instability in the politics of it since its inception. And, it's really sad because the people don't deserve it. The women definitely don't deserve it. I personally think that, like, Pakistan does not deserve its women, period. I don't think they deserve its women, period. But I mean, you don't progress, you cannot move forward if you're still stuck to these ideas that are so draconian and so old and barbaric.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so how do you kind of grab, like, so obviously with your family you cannot ever, I mean, is it still the same that you can't ever like ask questions or voice your concern or anything, right? Like, so to them, are you just a completely like believing Muslim that just gets on with it? Or
Yeah, I kind of have to fake it, but I think since the Quranic class, the classes I took with the lady who taught me namaz, I remember like my father asking me if I was going to wear the hijab, and I said no, and he respected that, thankfully. And I remember, like, my parents asking me very quietly, why I don't pray and everything, and the only answer I could tell them is like, I just don't. So thankfully, the only reason why I'm able to kind of have the freedom or the expression that I have is because of my parents have allowed me to. Because thankfully, even though like they are very traditional, very religious, they never forced me to do anything. They never held a gun or weapon against me to do anything that I didn't feel comfortable doing. So I do love them. I do love them very, very much. But I sometimes do wonder, like, who would they have been if it wasn't for the Muslim identity that was so
Mhm.
ingrained into them. Because I think they could have done wonderful things in their lives outside of having their kids. But I love them very much, and I'm so grateful to have them in my life, even though I do, think like this, and this is who I am. I still, love Muslims. I still love, a lot of y'all. It's just I don't love every single one of you for how you think. Um, and especially the ones who lack complete compassion and humanity, because I think at the end of the day, like, I don't want to change anybody's beliefs. I'm not here to like kind of like dismantle the image of Islam or anything like that. I don't think I'm responsible for that. I don't think anyone should be. I think like you should be able to believe whatever you want, as long as you respect other people, and their lives and their humanity and their livelihood. But I think also what I do encourage any Muslim who's listening here is, you know, think about what you're reading, and this kind of take time discovering who you are in this world, in your life, and whether what you have been taught is beneficial to not only your livelihood but anybody else's livelihood. I think the number one example I can think of is in regards to homosexuality, the way that we view LGBTQ, which is also like, it's just like there's just so many like different like conversations around that. But if you're reading about your religion and it says this about people who just exist, you really do have to think about what that means to you in your life, going on later on in your life too. That's something that I would always encourage, is just to always be a skeptic and never stop questioning and never stop living and loving. It sounds so hippie, but yeah.
no, it's so wholesome and it's so like, I mean, yeah, it sounds so cliche and hippie, but that's how basic it is, right? Like, just be the
Mhm.
hardest thing is in this is though, because this means that you have to be better than the book that you're taught to obey.
Yeah.
So it comes naturally to a lot of people. Like, I would say my parents are some of the coolest, nicest. I wouldn't even say they're Muslim in some regards, but they completely think that they are. But I know
Mhm.
that they aren't because they don't follow exactly what Islam tells them to follow and be like.
Yeah.
They don't discriminate against people. Even their views on the LGBTQ plus community are changing because they live in the West and they see, us like people in my family challenging it, and they're just better people. Like, they want to move forward with times and progress. But Islam is what
Yes.
really keeps you back, and it keeps your growth and your every like your mental faculties stunted. But the biggest thing is like, as you said, I mean, the way it just talks about other people. So it encourages you to be this really kind of horrible, racist, divisive person who views the world as me and the ummah versus the other. And it's
Mhm.
not just that they're the other, it's like they are in a perpetual state of sin and we need to fix that.
Mhm.
Like it goes beyond that. So Islam live your life or let the other person live their lives
Yep.
either. It just kind of, works its way into everything. And
Mhm.
with that said, it stunts your humanity. It does not allow you to be a human in the way that you want to. And that's why I feel like with a lot of progressive Muslims or moderate Muslims in the West, a lot of them don't
Mhm.
actually know or have not read the Quran or probably don't even want to when they come across those kind of things because like some even like Nafarman, kind of like you, they don't want to take that leap out of it or for whatever
Yep.
various reasons. But
Mhm.
I know for a fact that they have not read the Quran. So, and I know for a fact your parents are better than Islam. But would you
Yeah.
say that they actually know like the tenets of it, like what it actually commands and the kind of hate speech in the Quran? Do you think they know this?
No, I think because even because like being Pakistani too is like it's just a mixture of, culture and like religion too. Like a lot of that stems into each other. So it's, a bit of both of why, they've accepted it, but I guess, as long as they haven't applied it to every single human being that they've met, they've like, come to that realization that, they live in the West, so they know that they have to like, think this way and stuff, but they don't know like the actual translation. A lot of my family members, they do read the tafsirs and stuff, but they're only reading the Arabic version of it. They're not reading the translation. And if they do read the Urdu translation, it is through like, watching those TV shows like with the imams and stuff when they give the sermons and they like, do the knots and stuff, which to me doesn't make any sense because why would you take the advice of someone on TV who may or may not give you the right translation to it? So I think it's very important to do your research and to learn from different people too. Because I think like even the identity of being a Muslim is just so diverse and different, which is why it's like it's hard for me to like let go because like I also consider myself very culturally Muslim because it's hard not to because the Pakistani culture that comes with it. But it's so hard to let go. But I think it shouldn't discourage people from questioning. It also shouldn't discourage you from also critiquing either. I really wish I could see like movies and TV shows that were blasphemous about Islam. Really like and what is that movie called Monty Python? Like I wish there was like a Muslim version of it personally, because that
Yeah.
would be hilarious. Because I mean, why can't we like make fun of this? Because there's so much material to work off of.
Oh my
Um,
God,
and
so
also,
much.
and I also do want to say, like, when it comes to, I guess, like a lot of stuff that people tell you that you're supposed to believe if you're Muslim. For example, jinns. That's something that I grew up like, being taught like, you have to believe in the jinn. That you cannot be Muslim if you don't believe in the jinn. I'm just like, I don't believe in the jinn. Like, I don't believe in ghosts and stuff like that. And I know there's like the whole Nazar thing and this and that.
Oh.
I'm not saying that these things are not impossible. All I'm
And
saying is that there
Nafarman,
are other things that could also factor.
can you just explain, sorry, before you talk about to the viewers what Nazar is so that the non-Pakistani people know? Because I just want to hear how wacky it is.
So Nazar means evil eye. So in just like long just to like give you a quick summary of what it is like if there's something good going on with your life, whether you look good or like maybe you've accomplished something, you don't want to tell so many people because someone can give you bad juju in a way that can completely demolish whatever you just accomplished. And then when something like that happens, you can blame it on Nazar, on the evil eye. And there's like different, I guess, like different verses in the Quran or like the Durud Sharif and all the kinds of stuff that you can read to yourself at night or like over someone else to prevent Nazar. I'm not saying that's not impossible, but all I'm saying is like there's so many things that can factor into why something didn't work out for another person or why this turned out to be the way it is. But yeah, like I think the reason why I haven't like gone after what I've gone after in my life is because of Nazar and all this other stuff. Which is just it's just so sad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, because I used to believe in this when I was a Muslim too, right? And I mean, it's as basic as like somebody giving you a compliment and being like, "Oh, Noria, you look so nice today," and not saying "Mashallah." Freak out. You would
Yes.
actually freak out that there was like something's gonna happen to me now, or like because this person didn't
Yeah.
finish with one word. And it's like, what kind of
Yes.
crazy way of thinking was that?
It was
I've
so
seen people
sad.
get
It
a
was so
spot on their
serious for
face
me
like
that
3 days later. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say like it was so like I was so desperate for these mashallahs that I would like tell my friends who are non-Muslims to say mashallah and they'd be so confused and scared. Just like, why do you want me to say this word? Just please say it. Just please say it. Cause like I don't wanna get the evil eye from you. I'm just like, what? Like it doesn't make any sense. Um, but yeah.
I would be the same, Nafarman, but I wouldn't make them say it. If they complimented me, I would say it under my breath for them. Like,
Oh,
I'd be like, to myself.
well, no, that's better because, like, imagine just like standing there, like, I don't know, in a grocery aisle and stuff like that, and just making some random, like, just an innocent person just say these words that they don't even know to you, so you don't get the evil eye. It's just ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Oh gosh, I literally over you anything can be attributed to it. It's crazy. Like if somebody was to break out
Yes.
and get a spot like on their face 3 days later, it's because that auntie at that wedding on that date didn't say mashallah.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think like there's something that I think it got so bad to a point that one of my coworkers told me just like, listen, the more power you give something, the more like it affects you. So like I knew back then I was just like, no, no, like I'm still sticking to my beliefs and stuff like that. But now looking back, I'm like, yeah, she was probably right. It's just like the more you give something so much power, like you give the evil eye so much power, which makes you believe like, okay, this was a factor into why I couldn't do something, why something turned out the way it did.
Mhm. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. Cordon Bleu is saying Cordon Bleu, sorry, is saying, "My mother used to apply" like, so it's like eyeliner on my
Mhm.
head to avert the evil eye. This is another thing that they do in, like, South Asian culture. Like, if I look back at my uncle's baby pictures, they've all got eyeliner under their eyes.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
Again, this stuff can get so it can get so whack, like, really quickly, like, even what you were saying about giving something more energy, that's how because I was at one point really, really scared of jinns. I think in one of my Islamic classes at school, I don't know why the Islamic teacher thought it was good to show us, like, some of these creepiest possessions on YouTube. So I just especially when it's like a woman's, body and, like, a completely different voice would be coming out of her, and
Yep.
then they would be, like, holding her down and reading Quran over it, and I actually went to Mecca once, and, they were, like, dragging this woman. It was on a randomish day, right? So it wasn't Hajj season or anything. So it was quite quiet, and you could get really close to the Kaaba, but they were dragging this woman there, and there was, like, a man, like, one man on both of her legs and one on her arms, and she was wailing and, like, screaming, and as they were, like, dragging her to the Kaaba,
Oh my
closer and
gosh.
getting louder. And I remember, like, as a child watching this, and my grandparents just said to me, like, "Oh, because as they're dragging her towards the Kaaba, evil just like freaking out because the power of Allah is too much." Whereas that
Mm.
poor woman was actually just having like a fit or something, if I think about it now, and
Yeah.
that's not the way to treat it. But I used to actually think to myself, and say, "Oh, if you someone I think someone once told me, maybe my mom or my Islamic teacher, if you don't think about the jinns, then they
Mhm.
won't come to you. The more you think about them, the more they get attracted to, like, wanting to come and mess with you." So it was like this constant
Yeah.
battle, even like, should I think about it? Oh, no, no, don't think about it. Okay, but, like, have I thought about it by not thinking, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just weird.
Yes, and I think, like, the other thing that I think about when it comes to jinns, like, my mom, like, still to this day tells me not to shower at night because the jinns like,
Mhm.
she's just like, "I can't tell you because like, you won't be able to sleep." I'm like, "Oh, just tell me what happens." And she's like, "The jinns watch you and, like, taking a shower." And I'm like, "How is that my fault? How is that any of our fault?" I mean, like, it's not my fault that you're decide to be a pervert and be a creep and watch other people. That's not my problem. Um,
Well,
so yeah,
apparently,
like
'cause
it's
they
just
can
like these
fall in
weird
love with
little
you
stories.
too. 'Cause they might
Yes,
fall
I'm
in
like,
love with you, not for
I'm like, okay, and that's my problem? No. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different houses you can go into. Like it doesn't have to be mine. But but like the other thing too, like when I'm talking about these things, I've always approached these stuff like with humor. I'm like, this is the only way I can like cope with it instead of like, trying to be in fear of this. I mean, it's
For
just
real.
it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous.
And like it's really like it does the fear does bind you. Like in Dubai, I used to live by the beach, and again, like what you're saying, this whole it was like don't walk under trees at night and don't go to the beach when you have
Yeah.
your period because you will attract jinns. I used to be so scared, like just driving by the beach when I was on my period, being like and like walking on the trees at night. There was like specific trees that jinns like to hang out in, and I've got stories in like Pakistan that jinns have come and fallen in love with one of the partners of a marriage and broken the family apart. And like,
Oh my God.
oh,
No, that is so funny because like, what if there's nothing but trees? How are you gonna avoid the trees? Like, what if you're walking in the forest? Because I remember like my aunt. I know this is such a side note, like this whole thing with jinns, but like my aunt told me about the trees. Like, don't walk under a tree at night. And I thought, okay, what if I had this whole scenario in my head? What if I get lost at night in the forest and I'm walking under a tree? What's gonna happen? Like, I'm trying to find my way out, and like some jinn is hiding in the tree and bothering me when I'm trying to leave. Like, how is that my fault at the end of the day?
I know. And it's like, how are we supposed to dodge these creatures we can't see? They can shapeshift into
Yeah,
anything they want, apparently. So like they have
yes.
the upper hand in all of this.
Yes, and it's like I think sometimes when I think about like, being Muslim and stuff, I think sometimes at the end of the day, we're only doing these things just to avoid going to hell. Or like, you're just telling people like you're just making stuff up along the way. Like this, like a lot of stuff, it just sounds so made up, but a lot of stuff is just like being told to you because like, you have to just do X, Y, and Z and more X, Y, and Z just so you don't go to hell. And it's just at the end of the day, it's a very huge complicated point system, and
Yeah.
it's so annoying.
Yeah, it is very much a rewards-based system, and honestly, the pain to reward ratio is not worth it. In Islam, I say
Nope,
it really
nope.
is not. Um, I did also want to say, oh, I also had a point on the is it on the jinns or oh gosh, I had something to say just to make a nice segue, and I wanted to ask you, but yeah, this live in the bathroom as well. This is why you need a dog to keep the angels out of your bathroom. Oh, yes. Someone gets weird with where jinns live. They live in graveyards, they live in beaches, they live in bathrooms, basically any dirty place as well. And then if you
Mhm.
have a dog, angels don't come into your house, right? But yeah, I remember what I was going to say to you that when I found out as well in Islam, like gets even weirder because I think according to the Hadith or something, we all have every Muslim has a qareen or qareen, something like that. A qareen, I think is the pronunciation, which is a personal jinn that's like always with us. So
Mhm.
it's not
Yeah.
just the two angels that are writing our rewards, but we also have a jinn version of ourselves that is
Mhm.
always hanging around with us. I don't really know the purpose of it, but it's there in the Hadith if anyone wants to go and
Yeah.
look at.
I and like at the end of the day, when we read these hadiths, when we read all the text and stuff, what is the point? Like you have to ask yourself, like, okay, so what is the point? So we know that we have this personal gin. Okay, so like, what are we gonna do now? Like, what? Like, can I ever see this personal gin? What happens now? And like, it's ridiculous, but it's like. It would be so comical if this wasn't so dangerous. Do you know what I mean, Noria? Like, if people didn't take so much of this so seriously that they would be willing to kill people over, this one verse and stuff, but it would be so comical if it wasn't so dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you kind of do have to filter out, the comedy because it's so ideology, it's so dark and depraved
Mhm.
at times. I mean, even the hadith are not half of them are not pleasant, and there's so much just sex and sexual abuse and
Yeah.
rape going on that,
Yeah.
it's
I could probably spend a whole like day talking about the whole sexual like the regressive sexualness and like the sexual repressiveness of the religion and just the whole idea, the whole word in itself of sex in Islam too. Because there's just so much to like talk about and it's really disgusting, but it's personally very triggering to me too because of like what I've been through. But it's it's very it is so there's just so much to say about it because on one hand especially like it does affect women like more than men and I can only say that as a woman um that like every single thing that you do is sexualized is seen through a sexual lens and
yeah,
it's like your body doesn't belong to you. So this is something I've always thought about. Is like your body does not belong to you. Your body belongs to your parents, your father, your brother, your husband, your mahram. It belongs to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, of Iran, but it doesn't belong to you. It's never like, talked about that as something that you need to take care of and something that you need to own. You don't own nothing as a woman. It belongs to somebody else. And that's the way I've like, viewed it and how I've been raised to like, see it. It's like our existence itself, and we can expand on this too, but our existence itself as Muslim women, but just as women too, our existence, there's a currency to it. There's a currency on our worth. There's a currency of like, what we do, and, how, like, especially being a Muslim, like there's a currency to it. There's, currency in our worth of like, whether we cover ourselves, whether we pray, like, how we serve our husbands, how we serve, the men in our like communities is a currency to our existence.
Yeah, exactly. Very well said, Nafarman. And I just say that as a woman in Islam, growing up as a Muslim woman, you never become a grown ass adult. To be honest, you always in Islam as a woman remain like, I guess, a glorified child at best. That's it.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
is what you are. You have no agency. You have no choice of your own. You have gotten can do nothing of your own volition. And
Yep.
as Naframan so aptly put, you are always, instead of being your own person, you're affiliated with the closest next of kin, if it's not your husband. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Male relative.
Hmm.
That's it.
Hmm.
We see this like, especially in the Middle East, like they actually have the one-ship system. Like women weren't even able to travel without out of the country or get on an airplane without having a written like note of permission.
Yep.
I'm talking over 18 years for Christ's sakes, you know?
Yep. Yeah, and
To
it's
work.
very sad.
I had to get a letter from my husband in Dubai to say I give her permission to work.
Mhm,
And I like, how many people do you have to beg for that? You have to beg your husband first of all to let you to work, and then you have to go to the
mhm,
government and say, look, let me work because my husband's allowing me. Like it's just
mhm.
what is going on here?
Yep, yep, and it's just like, you don't have any agency. You don't belong to you. And the whole like the reason why I mentioned the reason why I said it like, it's currency on our worth. The whole meher, and I think like the dowry thing, that's kind of something I was applying to like, you there's like literally a worth placed on your existence. Which is
Yeah.
very, very dehumanizing. Um, yeah.
Well, and not from one, not to make it that much darker, but it's got to be said. Like when I realized that, in Pakistani culture, women are so excited, like the Muslim ones especially, to get married, but like to have their nikah, like it's the biggest day of your life kind of thing. That's like the actual Islamic marriage. But that comes from the
Mhm.
NKH root word in Arabic, which is sex and sexual intercourse. So
Yep.
the fact that what you mentioned when you get like the husband gives you a meher at the time
Mhm.
of signing this marriage, that is essentially a payment for the transaction of sex. It's a
Mhm.
transactional relationship that's there. It's
Yep.
not anything based on love or purity or till death do us part or in sickness and health. No, it's a man paying your
Mhm.
father to have sex with you, essentially.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And it's just overall so dehumanizing too. And I've always tried to like, find that I've always been so naive, like, just trying to find a love in all of it. Like, oh, like maybe he is paying this much because he loves me. That's how much, they love me and stuff. But there's no value. Like there's no other value other than the currency and that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Naframan, what would you say to this comment that Islam is a religion that protects women the most?
Oh, oof, I don't think it does. And I think that is like very attuned to how you experience that religion and the environment that you were raised in, because you can't speak for everyone. And I think like it really like, at the end of the day, I really wish that we could all say like, oh, it's all up to your interpretation and stuff, but it doesn't protect everyone. Because I mean, when we talk about, like the rights of women in Islam and women's rights, why are they still fighting for them if they have rights? Why are we still fighting to exist if we already have rights? Why are women still being killed if they have rights? And where are these rights? And also, let me just ask a question to that user. In what part of the world are we supposed to feel safe as a Muslim woman? In what part of the world can a Muslim woman exist safely with her rights? Can we answer that? Because I
Yeah.
mean, the religion can say whatever it wants. Like the book will say whatever it wants, but people don't follow it. But I mean, like who whose fault is that though? Like there's so many different interpretations of the book. There's different like um guidance is given and stuff. And I know like men are at the center of it, but I think you really do have to ask yourself like, in what world are we safe in? In what world can we like find those rights and feel secure?
The person, sorry, Nedja, is saying the
Mhm.
veil covering it protects you, and people see your worth based on actions. You're crazy and have no reference. What would you say to this?
I mean, I
Ramon,
think
can
it
I let you
doesn't.
answer? I'll be back in 1 second, yeah? But just answer this and we can move on. If
Yeah,
you want to answer it, you don't have to.
yeah. I think like when it comes to like the veil and everything, you have to ask yourself, why does one need to wear the veil to get protection? Because I mean, when we think about other societies who haven't worn a veil, haven't covered themselves, you don't really see a lot of the problems that you would see in a lot of Muslim societies in regards to like sexual abuse and violence. Um, so yeah, you really do have to ask yourself why someone needs to cover themselves to protect themselves. Because I hear like a lot of, I know like there are a lot of hijabis who do it for, God, and they do it for, for their own sake, which is fine. Like, to each his own. But if you're only doing it for protection, you really have to ask yourself, who are you, protecting yourself from?
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Nafarman. I hope Nedja, you got your response. Um, that I don't know. Okay, Nedja, if you wanted to come and discuss Islam, then maybe you can join the stream in a little bit. But yes, it's I don't know what you're saying in the comments right now. Ultra, thank you so much, G Block, and Happy New Year! Happy New Year to you as well in advance, and a very happy Yuletide. A Merry Christmas. Can we say that? We can't say that as a Muslim because apparently, you're wishing the Kafir, but Kafirs are supposed to say Eid Mubarak to you, and that's absolutely fine. But
Hmm.
thank you so much, Ultra, for your support and for always like being here. And Shiv, thank you so much. Twice in 2 days, we've caught each other now. So yeah, this has been so nice. Thank you, Shiv, for being here as well and for your support. Um, what what is oh prophet is fake is saying what is safe when Muhammad says you can't even ask a man why he beats his wife exactly, and I think
Yep.
that's back at Nedja. Exactly. How do you say Islam protects women? Like, what leg are you standing on? You have references. Can you bring them to us and show us how Islam and where it protects women? Where does it say do not rape women, do not beat women? I don't think it does. Um,
Yeah.
but
And
yes,
that's why I also think like going back to what you said, that like the people are better than the book, or like the hadiths and all these texts is really wish there was also like a more bigger emphasis on that from the community, because this is what a lot of the text does say, and you're fighting against that grain. So it does say a lot about how it views women and their existence.
yeah, exactly. And so basically, now Farman, where do you stand now in terms of like where? So for me, when I've been doing these streams, obviously, I think you've heard with like Madiha and IW. IW is also like a huge proponent of the Women's March in Pakistan, and we
Uh-huh.
thought that we need to try and bring a new dimension to this because. What's so problematic is when they're trying to fight for their rights that you say
Hmm.
where are these rights, they're holding up signs that say oh, Allah gave me rights, right? And on the other hand, they're trying to like
Hmm.
fight for their rights. And I'm like, okay, like you're right about one thing, but then you're shooting yourself in the foot by saying Allah gave you rights in the same breath. So we need
Mhm.
to separate these two things. But like you, like I think you're on the precipice, that's the word, precipice, right? Of not wanting to make that final kind of leap over just because of various factors like the
Mhm.
fear and the indoctrination and kind of you're surrounded with your family and all of that. But how do we go about in Muslim countries and societies trying to fight the good fight and for women's empowerment with also trying to separate it from the very religious without completely isolating them and hurting their sentiments and making ourselves come across as Islamophobic?
Yeah, it's hard to do, and I don't know, like, I will ever have a clear-cut answer to, or solution to that, but I think it really does, for us to just sit around and talk, it comes from a sense of compassion and humanity, and I think, like, we as it's gonna be it sounds so, like, cliche, but you really do have to get to a point of awareness that you have to show compassion to another person, to listen to them, instead of jumping to the whole label like, oh, this is Islamophobic. That if that's the only thing blocking you from having this conversation, if like Islam gave you rights, it's the only thing blocking you from having this conversation and listening to people who have, had these experiences in these societies, in these families where these seeds of, uh, this religion and these interpretations or patriarchal beliefs have been planted. If they're telling you something that's very common, that's been heard over and over again, then you have to accept that there is a problem, but you have to go through that block. Like you cannot like allow that Islamophobia to like get in the way, like that label to get in the way of not getting past that to even have a conversation about this. Um, it's like you said, it's just like, on one hand, you have women who, are fighting for their rights, but they said like, God gave them their rights. And like in like I guess in a spiritual sense, yes, of course. But where like honestly, like how where do you go from there though? How do you like progress from there? If God gave you those rights, what can you do structurally, legally to have these rights implemented? What can you do like as a society structurally to do that? Who like how do you like get past that? And there's just so many different ways, avenues that you can go through to like I guess have this conversation, but it does start with having a conversation first and foremost, which is why I love like the lives that you have with Madiha and IW, honestly. And hopefully I give you the different perspective growing up in the West and just kind of having like all these like different I guess complexes of like my identity, because these complexes complications, they do exist, these doubts exist, and I know I'm not the only one who is experiencing these thoughts or have had these experiences, but it comes to the level of showing compassion to the other person on that other side, and instead of just saying like, no, I can't even talk about this because oh toba, like this is blasphemy, you're saying something against Islam and I'm not gonna be able to accept this is Islamophobic, and you guys are not gonna be seeing heaven and blah blah blah. Like if that's the only thing that's stopping you from having this conversation, then you're not gonna be able to move forward. um and I think you have to look beyond your household, you have to look beyond your experiences to have these conversations. I am so grateful there's so many women who are Muslim, who are proud of being Muslim, and who are hijabis, and I'm proud of being hijabis, who never experienced oppression, that they were able to walk freely into that. I'm so happy for them. And I'm so grateful they had those experiences. But it like these stories, this a lot of traumas, religious traumas, sexual traumas that come from Islam, they exist, and they exist beyond your doorstep. And it takes a lot of like level of awareness and compassion to take that step and listen to someone. And I hope that
Yeah.
answered your question.
No, that did. Honestly, that's a lot. Like it's nice to know that would be a healthy way forward. It's just that, I hope that they are able to find that compassion instead of seeing us as like enemy number one immediately because of what we're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Because we need to, as you said, like in order to progress, we're gonna have to meet halfway. So sure, I'm
yeah.
definitely happy to like tone back the rhetoric when it comes to Islam, but yeah, they also need to kind of reach out and say, okay, we are
Mhm.
going to tolerate what you're saying because we have the same interests at heart, right? And as you're saying, like
Yeah.
we want to make change at like on a grassroots level, so like socially, legally, like we want to put infrastructure in place to
Yes.
protect women. And
Yeah.
you can't do that. But like sometimes I just think Pakistan is a lost cause because, like as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
there's like the domestic abuse bill. If it's going back and forth, and we're like, it's like banging your head against a brick wall, right? And
Yeah.
you, when you mentioned earlier, what's the common denominator? It's Islam. So
Mhm.
let's not beat around the bush. There's a massive elephant in the room, and it's called Islam.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think also, I think we had to come to a place like, as, I guess like as ex-Muslims, agnostics, atheists, as, Muslims too, that like you really do have to choose your humanity above everything. Because if not, like if you don't, there's no separation of state and religion
Yeah.
in these societies, it does not go well. And there's specific evidence of it not going well. There's so many like cases of it of not going well as is seen in front of us. And I think really I am very interested in the grassroots aspect of it because I want to move forward with working with women of our like background, especially South Asians who have experienced sexual trauma and religious trauma, and actually providing more of a support group for them and coming together and just like talking about their experiences, just like we are, just so they have a safe space too. Because I know these safe spaces exist in podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff like that. And I know like there are a lot of Muslim spaces that provide that, but it's just whenever I see like stuff like that online, it's just the reaction to it is just so it's just so disgusting, and it comes from like the men's reaction to it is just like oh my god, like how can you like talk about something that's so haram. Like, why would you even talk about this? Why would you like talk about your past experiences? Like this is destroying the ummah of you guys going together and even talking about it. I mean, if our like experiences are destroying the ummah, then you don't have one in the first place.
Yes.
Honestly,
Thank you.
if if Muslim men are like if the, it's just something that I've been screaming from like my childhood that you all can pray 5 times a day, but the people that you're praying shoulder to shoulder to, a lot of them are abusers, a lot of them are rapists, a lot of them are enablers. They exist in your ummah. Therefore, you don't have an ummah to begin with, because like if you have fights with Shias, if you have fights with Sayyids, if you have a fight with this one caste, if you have a fight with someone who's not the same, does not have the same lineage as you do, who has a different last name as you do, who is a different gender or like a different race than you, then you have no ummah. There's no such thing.
Yeah, exactly. Touche. And Nafarman, I have this question for you. Let me know if you fancy answering. Tahrim's
Mhm.
asking, why do you think, sorry, I think it's what do you think of people who say because Islam is the one true religion, whatever is Allah's will has to be true. So basically justifying anything morally to please Allah.
Oh, so there's different answers I want to give to it. Who I am morally, my morals come from people. Who I've been taught to be, it comes from people and my life experiences. It's never came from, being Muslim. I learned compassion, learned how have compassion through people, through their experiences, and meeting different kinds of people who weren't also Muslim. And I think when also your first part, the Islam being the one true religion, no one knows that. Honestly, when we leave this world, we don't know what happens. And I don't know what is what, like, is just such like it is such a heavy thing to even like hold on to, because we don't know what is one true religion, because there's another religion saying the same thing, and there's like another religion in another side of the world that's saying the same thing, and there are many people that exist in this world who don't even know what Islam is, who have never been introduced to it. So are they also going to go to hell because they were also never introduced to that or didn't even know that it existed? And they're like, when it comes to even the concept of God or the creator, there are so many different ones that we were taught, and it's just hard to decipher who is the real one. And I think like when you're when you try to like find a purpose in that, like it's honestly it's hard to do because there's so many different like religions, there's so many different gods. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yeah. Oh, I can't hear you, Nuria.
Oh, sorry, I had to go turn the heating off. I think that answered the question very well, Tahreem. I hope that answered the question for you. We had another question from Rory Nafarman. Just your thoughts. Do you think the hijab should be banned?
No, no, I think like not I don't think there should be like a piece of clothing that should be banned at all. Like you should be able to wear whatever you want. I just get a little concerned when I see little kids, little
Yes.
girls being forced to wear. I think honestly, I don't think there should like be a ban at all like on hijabs, but I think honestly like a lot of these, Muslim leaders, they should be concerned when they see little girls wearing it outside of, of course, prayer and everything. I think that's just something that, we should really think about and like, talk more about too. But I don't think there should be an overall ban on the hijab.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you for that, Nafarman. Veiled Rose is saying thank you both so much for this stream. You're so welcome, Veiled Rose. And I know Veiled Rose definitely relates to a lot of what we're saying here, Nafarman. She's also another very strong, powerful woman. So thank
Mm.
you for being here, Veiled Rose. Um, we have a question from Tanky as well. Tanky, thank you so much for your super chat and your question and for being here and being so engaged in the comments. Much appreciated. As always, Tanky is asking Naframan, do you have any thoughts on Islam in America? For instance, the Nation of Islam or in general reverts in the US?
I think like it's hard for me to answer those questions because I haven't met every single Muslim in America, so they're gonna have different thoughts on, their identity and stuff. And I do want to overall go to like the answer that I gave when like there's just so many different, I guess, interpretations that's so hard to find the right one. And there's so many different identities within the religion that is like hard to pinpoint what is like the true identity, what is like the true what it means to be a true Muslim because you like they can think like reverse can think like maybe they're the true Muslims but then someone else could think the opposite of that, so it's just there's so many different like concepts of that identity depending on where you go. That's what I would say to that because just there's just so much that we don't know too, like there's just so many like different identities within that. And I think when it comes to reverts it's just honestly, I wish they could just chill out. I wish they could chill the fuck out sometimes. Because they like one of the reasons why like I guess I felt so much shame and guilt from it is because like when I would meet a revert, it's like they knew so much more than I did. And I think sometimes we do have to talk about how like Islam is viewed and Muslims community is viewed in the West versus other countries because a lot of people come there for the immigrant experience. It's the like immigrant experience. And a lot of the reverts, they like, had a choice into walking into this religion. Whereas like I, for example, have more, it stuck to me as a cultural identity. And there's just so many like I guess different like issues with that, I guess. And like there's different questions that can be asked about that because a lot of us don't take it so seriously. And the like talking about reverse, there's something that I want to suggest to you, Nuria, and to anyone who's like out there. There's a documentary on Netflix called Ghost of Sugarland. Have you ever watched it?
No.
And I would suggest looking it up. And it's basically a documentary done by, I think he's a Pakistani director, and as he's a Pakistani American, and he basically um, filmed his friends. They're like covered in like superhero masks, and they basically are talking about a friend. They're like, I'm pretty sure they're like all Pakistani and Muslim. They're basically talking about a friend who they had, which was their only one black friend that they had in their circle, who basically joined ISIS after learning about Islam. Um,
Oh, wow.
so I knew about this
Okay.
documentary before I even knew like what ex-Muslims were, but watching that
Yeah.
documentary and just kind of seeing like the spiral of like this individual, like, who was never Muslim, kind of learning about Islam and just trying to want to learn more about it. The his friends basically in the documentary saying like, we just told him like, just do your research on it. Like, I don't know what to tell you and stuff. And just kind of like dismissing like his questions about it the same way that I was dismissed about my questions about the religion too. So it is a very interesting documentary. I would suggest watching it, but it kind of does I guess like reflect the whole like reverts versus like the culture of Muslims and like their different experiences and their views on the religion.
Oh my God, no, thank you for that recommendation.
Yes,
Yeah, people are saying it's excellent. I will definitely check that out. Thank you so much for bringing that
yes,
up into our
yeah.
attention.
It's It is very short, but it made me feel really sorry for that gentleman because he did not have to do all of that. He did not have to go all the way to join ISIS, because I think that's just what it meant to him, what it meant to be a Muslim. And it really does go back to, I guess, like a lot of the ideas, I guess, like what a lot of ex-Muslims talk about is like what it means to be a true Muslim, what it means to, and like what does true Islam even represent? Because if this young man who had no business being on the other side of the world became Muslim for that one main reason, there's just it's just a lot to think about. But it's a good documentary, and I suggest like anyone who's listening to this, ex-Muslim or not, or atheist or not, it's interesting. It is interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I completely can, I mean, I think the man must have done extremely good and succinct research into Islam because, to be honest, I say either you read that stuff and you become an ex-Muslim, or you read it and you become like terror driven. It
Yep.
has the potential to do both of those things. So yeah, that makes sense. But I'm definitely going to check that out. Thank you, and I'm off for the next 2 weeks, so
Hmm.
thank you for that. Sammy's in the house. Hi, Sammy. Sammy is saying, just on the revert thing, that I found that many American reverts hide behind Islam to push their ultra conservative values, anti-LGBT, anti-feminist, etc.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's also a very, very. I mean, if you need something to guise all of these like toxic religion, and allows you to do that in this sense. So yeah, that could definitely be a factor for sure. Somebody did ask us earlier, and I think it was Tanky. So I will kind of just go into this a little bit because it's interesting. We are both in two very different Western countries, but come from a very similar background, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
Tanky was just asking, maybe like if we could just talk about a little bit about the different kind of manifestations of Islam in America vis-a-vis what I see in England. So if you can just kind
Hmm.
of see, like, and just from your own like personal kind of anecdotal experience, and how do you see Islam in America in general, like the Muslim communities, how it's how it's preached, how people manifest their religion, what's kind of happening?
So just from my own experience, it seems that like the Muslim identity comes from, I guess, like it's more about your like a racial identity. It's like it becomes more like your racial identity than like a religion. Um, because like throughout my life, I've always told people that like, I am Muslim, and like and then when I did tell people that I was like Muslim and stuff like that, I always treated that like as kind of in a way your racial identity because there was just so many different stereotypes because of 9/11. There was just a lot of negative um, image and a lot of like negative issues around that I think a lot of us had to feel that we had to represent it very positively and stuff like that. And I think it's just very different versus from what I've seen just from like the UK and stuff like that. That like a lot of us, just from my experiences, that we feel very protected by the identity, because of how America has viewed Muslims and the like the attacks against a lot of people and like the racial profiling, I guess, like the a lot of the issues with federal
And Trump's
government intervening
Muslim
in
ban
mosques
as
and stuff
well.
like that, the
So,
Muslim ban, yeah, and stuff. So it's become like more it it's more about your identity and much than actually the religion itself. And I think like sometimes when I hear a lot of Muslims talk about, Islam is always like, oh, it's peace. Because I'm peaceful, because we have to make it peaceful, because it is compassion, it is humanity, because we have to show humanity, we have to show compassion to kind of like let people know that we're not the bad guys. To kind of just sum up like how it is manifested and how it's like, walked into. Um, and yeah, there's just so many things I could say about it. I just don't have the words now, but that's just how I've always viewed the identity. It's like we always had to kind of live up to just trying to be like trying to like show it in a more positive light so people weren't racist towards us or xenophobic towards us, which I completely get, but it should not take away the fact that a lot of the religious ideologies that a lot of us are not knowledgeable about, since we're so stuck on, like, making sure that, like, that Muslim identity is protected, that, like, the religion itself and the ideologies, like, go under the rug. It's just like, oh, we need to make sure that, like, the Muslim community is protected, and like, we're the good guys and stuff like that. Even though, like, the religion says this and that, like, oh, well, it's all up to interpretation. There can be gay Muslims and stuff like that. We can all be different. It's all kumbaya, but it's not really all kumbaya, because when you see it implemented into law, when you see it being implemented in as law into other countries, it goes against whatever you're preaching. Literally, it goes against whatever you're preaching. But it's just so hard to, like, I guess, a lot of us to come in terms with that, because you are so stuck on protecting your Muslim identity, that you don't even want to accept the fact that Islam could be problematic. And that just what I experienced, because I did not want to accept that it was problematic at all, even though, like, I was always questioning it. I just really wanted to believe that, the Muslim people around me, like, they have good intentions. Maybe Islam is good because they are also good. But when you look at the ideology itself, it's not good at all. Because I always thought, like, it's the people, it's how they interpret it. It's how they're living their lives, and it's just how they want the religion to mean to them. But at the core of it, it's no, the actual source. And I don't think a lot of us are afraid to go to the source. They don't want to think about it.
Yeah, and I really respect the fact that, like, even like falling short of calling yourself an ex-Muslim for your own reasons, which I completely understand, you have no
Mhm.
issue like actually facing up to the facts and saying, right, if there's a cancer spreading, we've got to, like, get the tumor from where it actually is and extrapolate it. Like,
Mhm.
that is Islam. When you talk about, you have no issue saying that, like, as Sam Harris says, the problem is actually with the fundamentals of Islam, right? Is as
Yeah.
opposed to with the people. And that's why I'm always here saying most Muslims are actually better than their religion.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to kind of compare that to the UK, it stems from the same place, I'd say, like very much what you mentioned. And well, I mean, when I was 9 living here, because we live in a community that, there's quite a lot of Muslims there. And even though I went to like a kind of Christian-y school, I wore
Mhm.
hijab at the age of 9. And I
Mhm.
wasn't forced to do it. I wasn't pressured to do it. I just to preserve and present some kind of identity.
Mhm.
And that is, like, as you said, that's what it was. It was almost like before being Pakistani, you are Muslim, right? So
Mhm.
and then again, for people like you and I who are the diaspora in wherever we are, we're also juggling trying to be British or be American at the same time. Um,
Mhm.
there's all of that going on, but in England, it does start from this kind of identity crisis, I guess, or really wanting to hold on to what you know in a foreign land. And I think the first wave of like immigrants really held on to that, and with each generation that's passing, it gets watered down. But in England, we see these pockets where, as you're saying, like, I think what lends itself to you being able to think the way you do is because you said your area is so diverse. In
Mhm.
England, we've got these insane pockets of like areas which are actually like de facto no-go zones. And it's just little mini like Pakistans or mini Bangladeshs or mini Indias. And
Mhm.
it's just and they're watching the same dramas, they're listening to the same Islam TV, Peace TV, Zakir Naik, whatever. And I mean, now these are the kind of people that are going to these schools and saying, don't you dare teach my kid about LGBTQ plus rights. Don't you dare give my child sex education. Dare the religious education teacher have a mug with, Jesus or and
Mhm.
Muhammad on it. So our teachers here have had to go into hiding. They've got like not that much state protection because the state is so afraid to be labeled Islamophobic. So they bend over backwards to accommodate these guys here. It really is like a case of the Muslims have really successfully, because in America, I understand, like, it is a bit of a different story, on the back of 9/11 and all of that. But in the UK, they really play this victim card, and it is a victim
Mhm.
complex that they have, trying to push words like Islamophobia into legislation. So we already have laws for hate speech, but trying to give your religion a special privilege and
Hmm.
special feeding for it to not be attacked and your feelings not be hurt. It's a bit like, as a community kind of grow up in this day and
Yeah.
age, like be able to kind of, and it's not like you have a whole host of problems, as you're saying. Why is this stuff happening? Why are grooming gangs predominantly Muslim Pakistani men? Why
Hmm.
are cousin marriages so predominant here? Where does this all stem from? Like, go back to the source. But yeah, Tanki, I hope that kind of gives you an oversight. I feel like American Muslims, and I'm just talking very generally, um, are quite different from British Muslims in the sense that the British Muslims like overtly want to make their identity manifest, and they are constantly clashing with like university, with like just the public domain to have that shown. I'm not sure that's necessarily like exactly the case in America. I think there's a pushback, like when Trump says something ridiculous and tries to ban Muslims and all of that crap. But
Yes.
yeah, I think 9/11 kind of changed the landscape.
Yeah, I also want to touch on like some of the things I've seen in the UK, like are very ISIS adjacent. Like there are just some things that you could not do in the US. Like I know that there are like certain neighborhoods, like Dearborn, Michigan has like the highest population of Muslims in the United States. So like of course there's like a little like a huge city of Muslims there, and like there are many different
Yeah,
cities
just sorry,
around
what
the
was that
world that are
city,
like,
Nafarman?
no, I was
What was
saying
that
like
city?
Dearborn, Michigan.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, Dearborn, Michigan. And they're like different, man, like a lot of different cities in the United States. They're like, little Pakistans, like little Karachis, Islamabads, and stuff like that, like a little Morocco here and there. And there's just like a very like diverse group of like Muslims that come from so many like, different parts of the world that is seen more like our defense of like our identity comes from of an immigrant perspective in a way. It's like you're trying to preserve your family's legacy, like they're basically like trying to appreciate your family's hardship to get to this country that is
Yes,
so hard for you to let go or even decipher what it means to be Muslim, because it's what was given to you, and it's something that is important for you to hold on because it's something that like you came with. It's all that your parents have come with. And also like just certain things that I've seen in the UK that could not pass in the United States. Like I think there was like a video of Mohammed Hijab, dare I say his name, like on the streets of UK talking about like, he
yes.
was pro-Palestinian and stuff. I am not knowledgeable to have any kind of view on that dispute. I hope that like they're both in peace and stuff like that. But like, here's the thing, what the stuff that he was saying in that video, I would say like all that stuff that was anti-Semitic could not pass in the U.S. FBI would be he will be on a watch list. I'm telling you, he will be on a watch list. Some of the things that I've seen, like the grooming gigs and stuff like that, you would be on a watch list. It could not pass at all. There was like an incident a while back. There was like an honor killing, and like the father who did it. He recently got caught and he was on the FBI watch list, and it was something that was taken seriously. It's something that was viewed like people thought like this is terrible and it should not be happening. And that's kind of like our view on it. It's just like yes, these incidents happen in our community and it should not be happening, but I guess those conversations are not on a grander scale, you know for us to implement something to, I guess, like to be taken more seriously. Whereas, like in the UK, I've seen more honor incidences of honor killings in there versus in the United States. And I think that also goes back to like just how we like, view our Muslim identity and how we approach it.
Yeah, no, most definitely. That, yeah, I mean, living here and especially working now in this sector, even like the stuff we deal with in terms of like forced marriage, it's going on to such a large scale. And as you said, like things like in terms of how the playing field is so open for Mohammed Hijab to almost like he's literally just stopping short of inciting violence, right?
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
says some very insightful things like, "Oh, if we're not going to come get you, don't worry. Like Muslim gangsters exist." Like, what
hmm,
else is that if you're not kind of dog whistling to those more rogue Muslims to go ahead and like carry it out for them?
yeah, yeah.
And
And go ahead, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I really did not want to say that man's name on this stream because I don't want any kind of traffic from him. But all I'm gonna say, if he hears this, don't even try coming to the United States because that's not gonna work. That shit does not play here if he tries to come here and do some shit like this. Because, like I said, those threats are taken very, very seriously. So he needs to stay where he is at. Unfortunately.
Yes, I love that. Don't even try it. But listen,
Hmm.
listen, can we get him on a plane anywhere out of here? Because and just a
Yeah.
one-way ticket.
I also want to like that also like what may wants me to touch on another thing when it comes to like a lot of like Muslims that are also like trying to implement Sharia law where they live or complain about like the freedoms quote unquote that like people have around them. It's just so ironic, but it's just like it just seems so out of touch for like for to hear that because like those same freedoms that you are complaining about is what has allowed you to be who you are in those countries. um and it's just it is very very frustrating because like you like I want to respect their views and like I get it, but there are many different places in this world that will allow you to live like this and not allow you to see LGBTQ or trans people existing, and there are many different places in the world that you can go to experience that if you don't like those freedoms.
Exactly. And those freedoms are it's what is allowing you to get away with spewing whatever crap you're spewing in Speaker's Corner and everywhere else that you go. It is those very freedoms. And as soon as the roles are reversed and Islam comes into power, all of that will be shut down in a second.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just so ironic that where there are Islamic theocracies in action, they just don't want to go and live there. So clearly that's not a perfect state either. And
Yeah.
again, it's like, what is the true Islamic theocracy? Because he's not going to agree with Iran, because that's a Shia regime. He's not
Hmm.
going to agree with the Taliban. I mean, maybe he will to a large extent, but at some level, they always say, like, oh, that's not the perfect manifestation of it. That's not the
Yeah.
perfect manifestation of an Islamic state. So, right? And where is it? Because I can assure you, even in its, like, um, what do you call it? Like, it's kind of, what's the word? Like preliminary stages, if you will, if this isn't the real one, it's a shit show, right? Everywhere. The
Yeah.
first to go, whenever there's a theocracy, are women and children. They are the first ones to
Hmm.
literally be like capitated from society, and that's what's happening. I don't know. Like I'm pretty ashamed with the response in England, like the lack of backlash, and like I just think the government need to grow more of a backbone in dealing with guys like him.
Hmm.
But I'm just waiting for him to be his own downfall and like one day actually cross that line because I'm
Yeah.
sure it's a matter of time. But
Yeah.
yeah, a one way ticket out of here would be nice.
Hopefully, or maybe can be banned from YouTube at least. Because I've seen some of the videos, I mean, a lot of the videos of like some of the men, the way they like talk about women. I mean, that's the other thing too. It's like the way you talk about women, especially. I mean, you are disrespecting Allah's creation in a way. Like I said, like we are God's creation. If you're sitting here, like talking about them in such a way, like you don't think you're not going to answer for that on Judgment Day, like just coming from your logic, aren't you not going to answer for that? Like the way you treat people in this world, like you're not going to answer for that. And it's just I think every single like Muslim that I meet, they have their own version of Islam or what it means to be Muslim. So it's just so hard to like get them past that like block, to have an open conversation and discuss like a lot of the different views that this religion allows to exist.
Yeah, yeah. We have a super chat from Now Devoted. So thank you so much, Now Devoted, for your support. Stop promoting Adidas. Lol, happy to see you. Here is the promotion for today. Yeah, no, happy to see you as well, being here and stopping by. I don't know how much of Nafarman's time, like I didn't want to take too much, but I asked like I think about half an hour ago, Nafarman, if people wanted us to like wrap up or like they had questions for you, and they were
Hmm.
like, please, can you keep going? Like this stream is so interesting. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you like how much time you have because we can look to wrap things up in the next like 10.
Yes, please. I'm actually hungry, so
Yeah.
I was gonna
What
get
was it?
something to eat, but yeah, like
Oh,
10 minutes. I really enjoyed my time on this stream. I hope like whoever is listening learns something. And if you're angry, well, that's fine. But I mean, like this is my own personal experience, and if you don't understand what that means, look it up. So I really
yeah.
appreciate you, Noria, having me on your stream and just listening to me. And I really hope that I'm able to meet you one day in person because I just want to meet someone who, like, just meet more people who had these like same like experiences that I did. Because a lot of us, I think, were just a lot of us were afraid or too ashamed to even talk about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, Nafarman will. I'm definitely gonna go come across the pond that side one day, like very soon, because my best friend actually lives there. But
Oh,
yeah, we will. And if you're ever on this side of the pond, like we'll definitely live it up. Don't worry
yeah.
about that. That's the beauty of this movement, like being able to meet like-minded people, and you honestly you kind of get a whole nother family, and it's so nice because as we're saying, like we can't even have these conversations with our own family. So it
Mhm.
really does become like this whole cathartic experience. But yeah, we will definitely live it up. I have a question for you
Mhm.
from Rory, and you kind of have touched on it earlier, and I have as well. But I think it's a good segue to ending because, yeah, I think we'll wrap up with this question, and I think it's a very important one to ask. And again, I know you might have already answered it, Naframan, but if you just wanted to expand a little bit, and then we can close things up. But Rory was asking you, Naframan, why don't you want to identify as an ex-Muslim?
It's, because of my safety, my personal safety, the safety of, like, my family members, and I honestly I guess I don't want the like, it sounds very cowardice for me to say that, like, I don't want the responsibility and consequences of having that title, because I think it takes a lot of courage and bravery for, such as yourself, Nuria, to have your name out there and to have your face out there and discussing this like in front of people because I don't have the knowledge to even like have a debate with anyone. Like I would completely lose. I don't have the sources because there's so many sources to decipher like different contradictions in the religion. But I think my experiences in this religion, I can only talk about like what I went through personally that made me come to this point of where I'm at as being an agnostic Muslim. I don't know if I will ever fully call myself an ex-Muslim, but I don't think I will be like a true um full believer in a way. I believe in like humanity and compassion more, and I hope that is like something that I have in my life forever to my grave. And I encourage anyone who, like I said, who has these questions or in the same position as I am, to reach out to me on Twitter too. Like I think you can also put like my handle too, Nuria, on Twitter if they want to
Yes.
reach out and talk more. If you do have these questions, don't ever stop questioning. And it's okay if you never do come to calling yourself an ex. And I understand, like, a lot of it comes from the indoctrination of fear and shame and guilt. But I think just to answer your question, that's why I don't fully call myself an ex. Because I want to believe that there's a creator out there, despite, what I've heard atheists and a lot of exes say about, the existence of the universe and stuff. I hope that whoever it is out there naively is bigger than this, is bigger than what the Quran says and what the Hadiths say and stuff, and I hope that all the Islamic scholars are wrong. Honestly, like I hope that, like if I do when we leave this world, I hope that whoever I'm meeting on that other end saw the universe a lot bigger than what we did. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Rory was saying that's completely understandable. And I just wanted to echo something that Veiled Rose said in the comments because I don't think it's cowardly at all of you. And Veiled Rose
Hmm.
is saying the same. It's not cowardice. Wow, the bravery you're showing. Hats off to you, Nafarman. So, I mean, it's not an easy feat, and it's not necessarily the case that you don't agree with certain tenets and the fundamentals of Islam, but somehow that leads you to atheism. That's why I think it's really important that, even on this channel, like we have a whole host of different experiences, because like this is beautiful. The fact that like Nafarman and I agree on just basic concepts with like in terms of like humanity and progression
Mhm.
and women's empowerment and basic like human rights being respected, and like and she's still calling out the things that I'm calling out, and we're saying Islam is problematic, Islam is an obstacle to women's emancipation, like these things do exist. Your own journey, and then you mix that in with all the fear and the actual shunning and ostracization by your own community, to the point where you could lose your whole family just by saying these two words and having that identity and that label. And it's definitely not worth it just for something that you know um is in terms of like how you think, like as Ishaq Ibrahim was saying here, I think Naframan, this is at you. It's better to work it's better to be smart than brave. Work smart, not hard. And she is smart, as in,
Mhm.
you know where and how you can make that change and have these conversations, and be able to actually have like real
Mhm.
dialogue that enacts change, because people are not afraid to talk to you. Sometimes the label can be off-putting, and
Yeah.
I've been thrown under the bus as well, just because I'm an ex-Muslim atheist, where people say I'm Islamophobic and I'm hating on Islam all the time. But yeah, I've just got to do what I've got to do, right? But I
Mhm.
completely concur. Like, and yeah, I think you're in a beautiful journey, and I just think you're a beautiful human being, and it's you're not made or cut out for an ideology like Islam. Like nobody is, no human being is. It
Mhm.
really actually robs you of your humanity, and the fact that you never found that comfort and warmth in it, but you saw it elsewhere, and then you thought, okay, let me just not leave all of this behind, but let me embrace almost humanism, I would say, and humanity and compassion. It's been beautiful. Like people have picked that up in the way you speak and the way you've been describing things the entire stream. So yeah, I think you've inspired a lot of people today. And again, I just want to say like hats off to your courage and bravery, speaking to us from the same house where your parents and family are Muslims, and you're kind of even saying this is a lot. So yeah, I'm really really impressed. Like everything you talk about Pakistani women being strong and all that, like I see it in you. I really
Oh,
do.
thank you. Thank you. No, I appreciate it, and like I just have so much love for Pakistani women. I will like be fighting with them till the day I die. I have a lot of nieces, I have a lot of female cousins, and honestly, the men versus like the women in my family, the women take it up a top tier every time in terms of how much hard they work, their success, their beauty, how they carry themselves as a woman is just top tier. And honestly, there's no one like us. South Asians, like brown women, like there's no one like us. And I always think like Pakistan, like I said, does not deserve its women at all. I really wish personally, like I always like say this, like I really wish I could like take these women to a different planet and we could just like move there. It's like live freely from like all the stuff that we go through because we have no choice but to be resilient, Nuria. We have no choice but to be strong because what's the alternative? The alternative, like for me, is much more worse. I would rather die than face the alternative.
Same.
And that's something that I told myself like when I was really young, seeing what I saw in my family, like I would honestly rather die than having to experience something like this. And you really do have to fight. You have to fight to live the life that you want to live, even if it's not conventional. You have to fight going left when people are forcing you to go right. Meaning, you have to pray 5 times a day and yada yada yada. And I hope that I can live my life curated with that mindset. And I hope that people have the courage to do so, financially, physically, emotionally, because it's not possible for everyone, unfortunately. But I hope that like whoever is hearing this, like I hope it's possible for you.
Yeah, exactly. And we do appreciate even Naframan and I that the positions we're in are pretty privileged, for us to get to the
Hmm.
point that we are now, for our parents to be as understanding and maybe didn't, shove religion down our throat the way that, and gave us options, to be honest. Like in the West,
Yep.
we are that much more empowered. Naframan and I can literally apply for a job anywhere and get financially stable and get independent. Like we can carve out a life for ourselves. So I think that's why it's even more like our heart goes out even more to those women like who are stuck back home in Pakistan who don't have the means to do this, and we feel like
Mhm.
in a way we have to use our voice to speak for the things that they can't even have like access to. So
Yeah.
even coming on a platform like able to say that they're so strong, and like we haven't given up on you. We recognize your struggle, and we recognize that our own men of our own country can't protect us, and that sometimes they are the perpetrators in many of these
Mhm.
situations. But yeah, I just think when two kind of like, I guess, critical thinkers like you and I link up from meeting over a space or whatever, and then having a conversation like this, it is a game changer. I wish like, if I don't know, maybe I should get Urdu subtitles or something, but people need to hear women like you, Nafarman, like the things you're saying, the clarity that you speak with, the things that you, even within the fold of, being a cultural Muslim or whatever, you can actually connect with them more. But like saying, like putting your foot down and saying, no, like this generational trauma, this ends here. We're not going to put up with this anymore. They need
Yep.
to hear like women like us say these things, because it's not talked about. We're always just quiet and submissive, or we keep it to ourselves, or whatever. No woman is out there saying these are the wrongs in our society, we need to put them right, and these are
Yep.
some hard truths that we need to talk about. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful for you, and I really hope we can do some um like big things together, even in the Urdu sphere. I mean, my Urdu's not great, so don't like worry about that. We could definitely we will definitely do something, because yeah, it's just, it warms my heart. Like I barely get to interview women like this on my channel. As you can see, it's like you, and that's not an issue. Like I love talking to them as well, but it's just so, I mean, this channel was made in mind to like, be first and foremost a platform, and say you are like reason for why this channel was created. So I really enjoyed this
Aw.
stream. Thank you.
Thank you. But thank you for like allowing us this platform to speak.
No, no, of course. This is as much like yours as mine. And yeah, Tanki saying thanks, Noria. I hope to see more of this. Me too. Like, I hope listening to Nafarman, other women will get inspired and come out and talk. And as you can see, like, you don't have to give away any personal details. We'll keep it really safe and civil. But it's really important that we have a voice. We really, really have a voice. Especially as South Asian women, like the shit we face, it's time for us to speak back.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yes.
we
Um,
got to, yeah, go ahead.
there was a few things I did want to mention. In regards to like any Muslim man who is also listening to this, if you like disagree with a lot of stuff that I'm saying, I want you to also reflect on the women around you and think about what you have done to advocate for their livelihoods and for their freedoms. And what have you done as a man, as a Muslim man? Because I think like as women, we have no choice but to advocate for ourselves, even if it is just ourselves. But you, as someone, as a man who has a lot of privilege, you can do a lot with your power and privilege to help your sisters, your cousins, your mother out as well. And you have to reflect on that. Like, what have you done with your life to help them out and protect them and make sure, like, they are able to live with the freedoms and choices that even though you don't agree with, that they're able to do that on their own.
Yeah, exactly. Touche. And just in the spirit of connecting as well, Veiled Rose is looking for any Sylheti speaking ex Muslims. So if you do speak Sylheti and you're questioning or have left touch with her because content is lacking in that language, and we want to spread this movement all across the globe. So please do get in touch. And yeah, I guess we'll just wrap it up with, do you have any final words, Naframan, to the viewers out
Um,
here before
so
we wrap up?
So I did have like one thing I forgot to touch up on, but I think like the whole approach to like I guess like the Pakistani approach to funerals is something that is like I think so disrespectful to see as a woman because like I like when it comes to like funerals, I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but like I've gone to a few funerals where like they don't allow women near the graves or to like
Yeah.
be near around the graves. And I think that was also another like pivotal point where like I just didn't feel good being a Muslim and being a woman because of those reasons as well. It was just like another reasons that were adding up as well. And I know I've seen a lot of people experience that, like, from Pakistan, like in the villages or like, different places where they weren't, because they were women, they were not allowed to go to graves, or allowed to like, even see the body and being able to, they were, being forced to like, feed other people, the guests, when you're the one in mourning. And it's pretty horrible. Like, um, I think like the way that we also see like the approach of death too, like I think we can have like a whole nother conversation on like how Islam views the afterlife and like life and death too. It's
Mhm.
just so it's like a reward system, but it's just like the whole thing about like, just suffer in this world so you can be rewarded in the afterlife. I don't get it. It's not, I can't accept it. And it's pretty horrible. But yeah, I really wish I went into more in our talk, but like I think that'll just be a conversation for another day because I do have to go. But other than that, like I loved talking with you, Nuria. I will love to reach out to you more. There are a few other things I want to talk to you about, like offline, like off live and stuff. But it was a pleasure and like a huge privilege to like be able to be on your platform and giving me the space to tell my story.
No, absolutely. And you are welcome back anytime. As you said, like, you and I can deep dive into some of these topics, and obviously we'll talk off air as well. But yeah, thank you so much. This was so much fun. And to all the regulars, Dee, Tanky, Veiled Rose, Tooth Fairy, John Stopman, all my mods, Rory, everyone kind of stuck with us throughout. Thank you so much. And I really know you guys were enjoying it because you wanted it to carry on. So I really appreciate the feedback, the engagement. I really appreciate the way you all handled Nejdar in the chat, and definitely did not let them get away with certain things being said about Islam. So yeah, amazing. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, it's gone past midnight in the UK as well. So good night. And oh my God, I was about to say God bless. Good night. And yeah, have an amazing week, everybody. Bye from myself and from Nafarman. Bye, everyone.
Bye.